Chapter 947. None of the 36 known star maps were actually of any use. Han Fei had tried every one of them, and even changed a weird angle to reveal the position of the red star. Although he couldn't see it, he wouldn't lose a piece of flesh. Of course, Han Fei didn't get anything. The heavenly talents of the Heavenly Sword sect were dumbfounded by his action. As for those ordinary people, they had already gone home to sleep. Only the strong masters were still paying attention to Han Fei. After another hour, Han Fei finally found the 8 diagrams formation in a large pile of stars. It was impossible for Han Fei to study the 8 diagrams. This thing was very complicated. He was just curious. Was the appearance of this pattern a coincidence or an inevitability? It stood to reason that Ren Tianfei had probably done what he had just done. Otherwise, Ren Tianfei wouldn't have given up. Han Fei suddenly froze. Wait, if he couldn't get out of this floating island, how did Ren Tianfei get out back then? As the first possessor of the sea-quelling painting, Ren Tianfei should have heard of the 5 legendary creatures and the Great Way's 9 sounds. In this case, how could he get out of here? There must be a way out. Ren Tianfei, why didn't you tell me such an important thing? Suddenly, when Han Fei was lost in thought, a voice abruptly appeared. It seems that you've figured out the key to the problem. Suddenly, Jiang Chao and Yang Xie turned their heads, only to see a person they didn't know suddenly appear here. Not only Jiang Chao and Yang Xie were surprised, but everyone who was paying attention to this place opened their mouths in surprise. When did this person come? Only Han Fei let out a sigh of relief and shook his head helplessly. Why didn't you tell me when we were outside? Ren Tianfei rolled his eyes and said, at that time, I didn't even know whether you could pass the mist of 9 sounds or not. What was the point of telling you? Haven't you found the problem now? Jiang Chao frowned and said, Han Fei, who is this? Han Fei looked around and directly formed a formation in the air. After a while, a large soundproof formation appeared, enveloping them in it. Han Fei looked at Ren Tianfei and said, Old Ren, are you okay with my junior uncle and senior brother? Ren Tianfei smiled in disdain. What's there to hide? Han Fei immediately said, Senior uncle, senior brother, he is the first owner of the sea-quelling painting, Ren Tianfei. Buzz. Jiang Chao and Yang Xie were both unsteady. Jiang Chao immediately became solemn. Venerable? Obviously, Jiang Chao seemed to know something, which was why he was shocked. Yang Xie was the same. It was the first time he'd seen an Exalt Realm expert, so how could he not be moved? Most importantly, why would an Exalt Realm expert be with his little junior brother? Moreover, why would the Venerable One appear here at this moment? Ren Tianfei ignored them and looked at Han Fei. Do you want to ask me how I got out? Han Fei nodded. Not bad. Ren Tianfei smiled. Then you have to ask me how I got in. The 9 notes of the heavenly law were extremely terrifying. I tried to reach the 8th note and failed. Do you understand the meaning of forgetting emotions? Aren't you talking about fish? If I could really achieve the supreme indifference, what would be the point of having a high or low cultivation base? Han Fei said angrily, then why didn't you tell me before? Ren Tianfei waved his hand and said, what if you didn't want to? Besides, didn't you know it when you were chatting with the 5 legendary figures? Why would I bother to tell you? Han Fei thought to himself, should I be wary of this old man too? Alas, I'm so tired. Han Fei said, wait, how did you get in? Your real body is not here. Ren Tianfei smiled. Puppets. I have a soul secret treasure that wraps a wisp of my soul. As for the puppet, I leave a wisp of my soul at the mercy of the 9 notes. After I pass the 9 notes, I will protect the main soul with a secret treasure and come out to destroy the ruined souls. Then I'll pass the mist of the 9 notes, won't I? Jiang Chao and Yang Xie looked at each other in bewilderment. Han Fei opened his mouth. This old man seems to be quite smart. However, it didn't seem easy to do this. First of all, you have to separate 2 souls and a soul secret treasure. Finally, you have to destroy another soul with one. It seems quite complicated. Han Fei said, so, how did your real body get in before? How did you get out? Ren Tianfei asked back, how did you get in? Didn't I give you the sacrificing punch? Can't you see how I got in? Han Fei couldn't help but be a little surprised. The sacrificing punch was even stronger than the previous art of invincibility. And he came in with the heart of invincibility. Did Ren Tianfei? Han Fei asked in surprise. Old Ren, are you also on the path of invincibility? Ren Tianfei said grumpily, the 9 notes is just a law after all. Just because you're on the path of invincibility doesn't mean that other roads are impossible. The venerable realm of human beings is actually the same as the sea demon's Tao. I didn't come in until I had the path of invincibility in my heart. Han Fei took a breath. Isn't it so demanding? Then how did the 3 of them get in? Han Fei was referring to the 3 people from the Heavenly Sword sect. Ren Tianfei said, swordsmen are ruthless. Of course, they have abandoned their emotions and have reached the grand oblivion realm. Their hearts are dead. Whether they are alive or dead, it's the same. They are just like 3 puppets. Hearing what Ren Tianfei said, it seemed to be true. Han Fei couldn't help but click his tongue. These swordsmen are really ruthless. They're so ruthless to themselves. Can someone really accept the idea of abandoning their emotions and desires? Han Fei took a breath. Then how did you get out? Ren Tianfei said, when I got the sea-quelling painting, I could actually break out of this place by force. The seal here can't trap venerables. However, I'm here to find an opportunity to become a venerable, and the opportunity is in this lake. I thought hard for a long time but couldn't figure it out. However, I also found the problem when I stood in the position where you are standing now. With that said, Ren Tianfei couldn't help but exclaim, my cheap disciple is really not an ordinary person. It only took him 1 night to stand in this position. Han Fei asked blankly, what's wrong with my position? Ren Tianfei said with a smile, this is a position where you can go out. Have you found that the star positions here are a bit similar to the terrain arrangement in the Mist of 9 Sounds? Hearing Ren Tianfei's words, Han Fei looked at the star positions again and asked in surprise, you mean? Ren Tianfei nodded. Star displacement transposition, unpredictable and unpredictable. But Ren Tianfei continued, but your purpose of coming here is not to go out, but to get the opportunity to become a venerable. So, it's useless to know how to get out. You have to know how to get that opportunity, right? Han Fei said, Old Ren, you were lucky enough to find this position. Why didn't you get that opportunity? Ren Tianfei said with a faint smile, how do you know I can't get it? Taking a breath, Han Fei pointed at Ren Tianfei and said, okay, you were the one who said it outside. If you could get it, you would have done it a long time ago. Ren Tianfei sneered. If I didn't say so, would I tell you how to get it? Do you want me to deliver the opportunity to you? Jiang Chao and Yang Xie were both dumbfounded. Why did it sound so weird to watch the drama? Why does it sound like Ren Tianfei could have taken this opportunity away? Ren Tianfei snorted. It's not that I don't want to take it, but when I got to that point, I suddenly found a problem. That opportunity doesn't belong to me. Han Fei was stunned. Doesn't belong to you? Could it be that this opportunity belonged to someone else? Does it belong to me? Ren Tianfei laughed. Maybe. Han Fei was dumbfounded. I don't fucking know anything. Why does it belong to me? Ren Tianfei said, okay, you've found the key point. You have to continue with your training. Now that things have come to this, you can think about it yourself. With that, Ren Tianfei sat on the ground, waiting to see how Han Fei was going to continue. Jiang Chao and Yang Xie also looked at Han Fei. Although they were confused, they had heard the general idea. They didn't care whether they could get the opportunity to become a venerable or not. What they cared about now was the identity of this new student of the Thug Academy. Han Fei frowned and looked at the map. This was not exactly the 8 diagrams. It was probably a weird array of star displacement transposition, which coincided with the 8 diagrams. In this area of stars, Han Fei observed for a full hour before he found that in this map, some of the positions of stars were shaking slightly. He counted and found that there were a total of 15 shaking stars. As the sky grew brighter, the positions of the stars also moved. However, Han Fei tapped his feet and tried to grab the 15 shaking stars. As Han Fei grabbed them, he suddenly disappeared from the surface of the lake. Jiang Chao and Yang Xie jumped to their feet when they saw that. As for the group of people who were spying in the dark, almost all of them ran over with a look of shock on their faces. Someone exclaimed, "Has this guy found the way out?" Someone was excited. "Can we go out now?" Someone had tears in his eyes. "Son of a bitch, after staying in this damn place for so long, can we finally go out?" Ren Tianfei said angrily, "Stop. If you want to go out, just wait." Jiang Chao shouted, "If anyone interferes with the students of my academy to pick the opportunities, don't blame me for disregarding our friendship as neighbors and killing them." Yang Xie also stepped forward. "Whoever dares to disturb us will be killed." Chapter 948. In the midst of 9 sounds, Chao Jiaran was walking forward step by step, her face expressionless. For the children of the big clans, they more or less knew some of the secrets of the sea-quelling painting. After all, countless seniors had been defeated for this painting. They didn't know much about the 5 legends. Because this was a test that everyone took for granted. If they couldn't even pass this test, why would they want to go through the mist of 9 sounds? Chao Jiaran, who had just been to 5 places, had already come to the mist of 9 sounds. The sound of 7 emotions was actually not a big problem for her. Chao Jiaran had been indifferent since she was a child. Similar to Luo Xiaobai, she was an absolutely rational person. She was different from Chao Tian. Chao Tian had a strong heart, but he was very emotional, such as Chao Qiu. Chao Jiaran was really not afraid of the sound of 7 emotions. If she encountered the 8th sound, this girl was likely to choose to accept the grand Wang Qin Dao. However, just when she easily passed through the sound of 7 emotions, she found that her position suddenly changed, and she came to the depths of an empty valley in the sea-quelling painting. And in front of her was her old enemy who was competing for the sea-quelling painting. Chao Jiaran looked at Han Fei lightly. An illusion? Han Fei was a little confused. He just felt that the scattered and shaking stars didn't seem to match the 8 diagrams. That was why he chose to try fishing. As a result, he found himself in an empty valley. And opposite him was the woman he didn't like, Chao Jiaran. Han Fei murmured, "I see. The so-called 8 diagrams and star transposition are for me to seize luck. It seems that if I want to control this world, I have to get the luck of others." Hearing Chao Jiaran's question, Han Fei smiled. "You don't want to try the illusion? Come on, beat me and you can walk through the mist of 9 sounds." Chao Jiaran frowned slightly. Not an illusion? After confirming this fact, the flute on Chao Jiaran's waist automatically flew to her mouth. Woo, a strange melody resounded in this empty valley. It sounded like crying, like the roar of ghosts and gods, and like a weird sound from the depths of hell. The scene in front of Han Fei changed, and the space of the entire empty valley seemed to be distorted. One after another, strange things that looked like undead creatures appeared and pounced at him from the void. Voila! The phantom glass wings were unfurled. Han Fei moved slightly and sneered. "Even the 9 sounds can't do anything to me. What about your illusions?" Rip. Han Fei seemed to be bathed in a layer of golden light. A pair of spiritual energy hands slapped down from the sky, and the demons and ghosts in front of them scattered in an uproar before this resplendent golden light. And this strange environment was directly torn apart by the void hand. In the next scene, Han Fei saw that Chao Jiaran's mouth was bleeding, but her expression remained unchanged. Chao Jiaran stared at him coldly. "Have you embarked on the path of the strong?" Han Fei chuckled. "You found out? However, since you've made your move, it's my turn now." The moment Han Fei flashed out, he thought that this woman was not simple and he'd better kill her. Otherwise, it would be a problem in the future. Bang, bang, bang. However, to Han Fei's surprise, Chao Jiaran, who had always looked like a fairy, made a fist mark at this moment. Her terrifying power was even comparable to Chao Tian's. However, would Han Fei be afraid of a fist mark? Han Fei was just a little surprised. Chao Jiaran turned out to be a soul warrior who had hidden her strength very well. No one would have thought of this, right? The invincible fist mark blasted out. In an instant, hundreds of fist marks bombarded each other in the void. The rocks crumbled and the sound was shaking. Although the Chow family's fist mark seemed to be very strong, it was still weaker than the invincible fist mark. This was not determined by the level of the technique, but by the different paths that different people took. 10 minutes later, the two figures were moving quickly, as if flashing, directly from the bottom of the valley to the top of the mountain. Han Fei was about to slap Chao Jiaran to death when he saw that Chao Jiaran suddenly made a seal in her hand. Han Fei had seen this seal before. It was a divine weapon seal, and it was of a very high quality. At this moment, the seal turned into a heavenly fist mark. In Han Fei's eyes, the remaining punch was a sure hit. The 100-meter-long fist mark phantom seemed to be going to blow up the entire valley. Is this your final trump card? Swish. Snowmorn appeared in Han Fei's hand. In the face of this high-quality or ultra-quality divine weapon, Han Fei was still lacking in pure strength even if he didn't use his sea-quelling bizarre treasure. So he had to use Snowmorn. This also made Han Fei exclaim that no one who could reach this step was weak. Draw the sword, swish. A flash of light seemed to flash between heaven and earth. In just an instant, the spiritual energy in Han Fei's body was instantly drained, causing him to stagger slightly. The sword light cut the fist mark, the mountain rocks exploded, and the fist mark was pushed to the ground. In the distance, a few eyes were cast over. On the Jade Pen Peak, in the thatched cottage, the punishing saber trembled slightly. Noticing the sword light, it said in a low voice, "Although it's just a sword light, it's full of knife intent. This boy is not bad." Above the West Sea, a big bird came out of the water and stared at the void. When the sword light slashed down from the sky, its eyes gradually turned from frost to normal. Humph, not bad. No wonder you dare to break into the mist of 9 sounds instead of coming to me. In the eastern fire forest, flames were boiling and a low voice was laughing. Lu Shan, who stayed here, couldn't help but wonder, what happened? Why is the powerful spirit of the fire seed laughing? Kacha! Clang, the fist mark collapsed, and the big seal flew across the sky, trying to block it, but was smashed away by Han Fei's sword. The cold sword intent swept across the big seal and swept at Chao Jiaran. The seal was a good seal, and the sword was also a good sword. But the two of them were not qualified to use the full power of these two weapons now. Therefore, it was impossible for Snowmorn to break this big seal. But at the moment when the sword light swept at Chao Jiaran, when Chao Jiaran felt the crisis of death, and when Han Fei's void lines were about to catch her, Chao Jiaran disappeared? Han Fei frowned. Where is she? In the mist of 9 sounds. Chao Jiaran's body suddenly fell to the ground, her white clothes were stained with blood, and she vomited a large mouthful of blood. In Chao Jiaran's memory, that sword light tore the sky and the earth apart. It was extremely terrifying. In the end, it was the mist of 9 sounds that saved her life. Chao Jiaran couldn't help but tremble. Others might not know, but she knew what level her seal was. An ultra-quality divine weapon was broken by a sword strike? Chao Jiaran was a little shocked. Freeze. See. Strange. Treasure. Han Fei's figure also disappeared at the same time. When Han Fei appeared again, he looked around and found that he had appeared on the 8 diagrams star position map and returned to the lake in the village. As soon as Han Fei appeared, Jiang Chao immediately said excitedly, "Han Fei, how did it go?" Yang Xia also looked happy. "Little junior brother, did you get the opportunity?" Han Fei shook his head slightly, took out an energy fruit, stuffed it into his mouth, glanced at Ren Tianfei, and said slowly, "I'm not qualified to get the opportunity yet. I'm going to snatch luck." Snatch luck? Han Fei grinned. "Senior uncle, senior brother, it's going to be dawn in less than an hour. Let's talk about it after dawn." With that, Han Fei stuffed another energy fruit into his mouth, sat cross-legged for more than 10 minutes, and got up again. His body moved slightly, and he stepped onto the 8 diagram star position map again, randomly chose a star, and grabbed it with one hand. It's tough. This mist of 9 sounds. It's too deceptive. However, fortunately, I've survived the sound of sorrow. Qing Chen struggled to get up from the ground. Among the 9 sounds, there were only 2 that were the most difficult for him. One was the grand emotionless sound, and the other was the sound of sorrow. The people of the Empyrean waterfall only knew that Qin was thick-skinned, but they had never heard of what happened before Qin came. Because at that time, his name wasn't Qin at all. And the name Qin came from his 2 companions, Jiangqingyi and Xiangqin. The 3 of them went from the village to the town, and then to the unknown place. They had experienced countless hardships, but during a relic exploration he was the only one who survived. Before they died, the 2 of them said to Qin, "Although we were born humble, our will is unstoppable. Only you can help us go on this road." That day, Qin got the sea token. That day, Qin named himself Qin. That day, Qin cultivated hard. Although he was usually a joker, no one in the entire Empyrean waterfall could compare with him in terms of hard work. At this moment, Qin grinned. After this sound, it's impossible for me to forget my emotions. However, I'm not afraid of difficulties. Just like the waves at the top of the Empyrean waterfall, they never made me retreat. Suddenly, the scene changed. Above the West Sea, the waves were surging. Qin appeared here inexplicably. When he looked up, he found that Han Fei had been standing here for some time. Han Fei glanced at Qin and then looked into the distance, only to find that Waterluster was standing on the sea, looking at them quietly. Qin, on the other hand, sat on the surface of the sea. Is this an illusion? Son of a bitch, why are you here? Han Fei scratched his head and didn't hide it. On the floating island, if I want to get opportunities, I have to get luck first. Unfortunately, I met you. However, you don't seem to be in a good state now. Qin chuckled. When have you ever been in a good state when you see me? Han Fei remembered that every time he saw Qin, he looked sloppy, which didn't seem to be in a good state. Han Fei was silent for a moment and said, "Although we have a good relationship. However, I have to take away your luck." Chapter 949. The sea was surging, and because of Waterluster, the sky was dark. This battle was unavoidable. Qin grinned. "Let's fight. Anyway, we haven't fought before. I've always heard that your physique is very strong, but how strong is it exactly? I don't know. Let's meet." Han Fei looked back at the surging waves and suddenly said, "Since you're cultivating with the help of the Empyrean waterfall, why don't we compete in the waves? Let's see who can last longer. Whoever retreats first loses." Qin's face was full of smiles. "Great. It's a good competition." Han Fei looked at Waterluster and cupped his hands. "Senior, can you do me a favor and make some waves?" Waterluster's voice was cold. "Sure." Waterluster flew to the sky, flapped his wings, and the wind rose and the clouds surged. The first wave was as high as 70 or 80 meters. The moment the wave came crashing down, it was like a small mountain crashing down on his head. Qin roared, and the ripples under his feet shook outward. His muscles bulged, and even his hair stood on end. Crimson light rose, like a small universe breaking out. The waves seemed slow, but in fact they came very fast. Han Fei flipped his hand, and a kitchen knife appeared in his hand. What he was going to do was to cut the waves. The waves rose, and black clouds covered the stars. Han Fei and Qin were in the chaotic waves. In the undulating waves, they looked determined. In front of them, there was only the wave. Devil change. In the face of a real wave, he had to use his secret method. Han Fei could even hear Qin's deep breath in his throat. 50 meters. 30 meters. 10 meters. No one can stop me. Unyielding. Qin roared, pressed his hands on the tide, and tore the huge wave apart. However, Han Fei didn't look at him. On the blood-drinking knife in his hand, spiritual energy was boiling, and the fire of spiritual energy was automatically emitting. Draw, Chilla. In the terrifying huge waves, 2 tiny figures stood above the sea, in the waves and in the void. The huge waves in front of them separated. The terrifying power tore the tide apart, and it did not close for a long time. Even Waterluster, who was watching from the sky, couldn't help but be a little surprised. Both of them were physically strong. But now, Qing Chen was tearing the waves apart with pure strength. As for Han Fei, he slashed a gap in it. He didn't seem as courageous as Qing Chen. However, the first wave was just for water luster to test their abilities. While it flapped its wings again. This time, another wave rolled over from afar. As the waves moved forward, they constantly absorbed the pushing force of the waves. Thus, the waves grew higher and higher. When it was 300 meters in front of the two of them, the height of the huge wave had already reached more than 200 meters. The waves continued. Water luster said indifferently, "This is no ordinary wave. This wave is more than 30 miles wide. Borrowing the force of the wave to advance, its power is terrifying." However, neither of them paid attention to Water luster's warning. They all knew in their hearts that victory or defeat would be decided by a single wave. There was no other choice but to fight. Han Fei turned his hand and put away the blood-drinking knife. At this moment, he turned his head to look at Qing Chen, slightly surprised. Because he found that Qing Chen's body was bleeding, and a strange power was condensing in him, more like a kind of soul power. No, Han Fei had never seen this kind of soul power, nor was it the power of law, but more like a terrible spiritual power, a manifestation of will. Han Fei turned his head, took a breath, and his eyes were firm. Now, in his dictionary, there was no such word as losing. Win or die. At this time, the most fundamental thing to support the invincible heart was faith. Han Fei's eyes were shining. His body was gradually dyed with a golden hue. In this darkness, he was unusually conspicuous. Water luster's eyes flickered in the sky. Alas, those who dare to take this path never have a good ending. The huge waves were already in front of them. If they looked up, they would find that the waves were curved, as if there was a big roof over their heads. That feeling was like a person walking into a huge palace. Looking up, he found that this one-story palace was more than 300 meters tall. That kind of insignificance of human beings made people sigh with emotion. Confronting this terrible power head-on, they had to guard a point, an absolute domain. Ah! Qing Chen's whole body, blood gushed out in an instant. Like a madman, he rushed forward against this terrifying huge wave. Sacrificing. Invincible domain. In an instant, Han Fei stepped on the void and launched a sacrificing punch. All his power was gathered on this punch. Also crazy, Han Fei directly blasted into this terrifying wave with his fist. At that moment, there was only the sound of the waves crashing in the world. Two silhouettes charged amidst the huge tide, extremely crazed. Qing Chen's body was stronger, and his terrifying will was covered with cracks, but he still didn't retreat. Han Fei seemed to have turned into a terrifying golden fireball, slowly rushing forward in the wave. Gotcha! Qing Chen finally couldn't stand it anymore. His will collapsed, he was overturned by the wave, and was instantly swept away a kilometer away. And Han Fei rushed in the wave, his eyes shining with golden light. He seemed to have forgotten that he had won. In the midst of 9 sounds, Qing Chen lay on the ground. No one knew how long he had been in a coma, but he finally woke up. He tried to turn himself over and lay on the ground, facing the starry sky. His body was dripping with blood, and it was difficult for him to even smile. Qingyi, Achan, this is really difficult. That guy is not a human at all. In the village, above the lake. Swish. Han Fei suddenly appeared, half kneeling on the sea, his face pale. Jiang Chao and Yang Xie's expressions changed drastically. Han Fei. Little junior brother. Han Fei spat out a mouthful of blood. I'm fine. Let me rest. After about 10 minutes, Han Fei took out a spiritual fruit and stuffed it into his mouth. At this time, he looked up at the sky, only to find that the sky had turned slightly white. The stars were gradually becoming hidden, and the 8 diagrams in the water began to blur. Forget it. I don't have much time today. I'll come back tomorrow. After a while, Han Fei sat on the shore and cast a few divine healing techniques on himself. Then, under the anxious eyes of Jiang Chao and Yang Xie, he grinned and said, I won. The two of them heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. However, their expressions changed slightly. Even Han Fei, who had embarked on the invincible realm, had such a hard time winning. Was the person who snatched the map this time a devil? So strong? However, hearing Han Fei's words, many people around were relieved. It was good that they won. They had been trapped here for a long time and were about to give up. Han Fei's arrival did bring them hope. In the darkness of desperation, how important was hope? Who cared if he was a descendant of a big clan? Or a disciple of a major sect? Or a nameless cultivator? At this time, a glimmer of hope rose in their hearts. Who cared who got the sea-quelling painting? Anyway, they couldn't get it. Since they couldn't get the painting, why couldn't they go out? On the shore, Jiang Chao frowned and said, Han Fei, is the enemy very strong this time? Han Fei nodded. I happened to choose a very difficult challenge. Yang Xie smiled and said, Little junior brother, don't be too stressed. The starry sky will disappear soon. Take a good rest during the day. We still have time. This is already a very major breakthrough. Han Fei nodded slightly and looked at Ren Tianfei. Old Ren, do I still have to fight with you? Jiang Chao and Yang Xie looked strange and solemn. This guy is not easy to deal with. From the moment he saw Chao Jiaren, Han Fei knew that his last opponent was probably Ren Tianfei. This old guy was not someone Chao Jiaren and the others could compare to. But what made Han Fei curious was that if Ren Tianfei didn't come in person, would he really fight with him? And this guy was a top master who created the indestructible body art. His main body was so strong that his clone couldn't be weak, right? Ren Tianfei chuckled. Why, are you afraid? Han Fei grinned. Of course I'm not afraid of you. Sometimes, I really wonder if you are waiting for me to collect all the luck so that you can defeat me once and for all. As long as you defeat me. However, even if I can defeat others, I can still defeat you. Ren Tianfei laughed. It depends on you. The sun rose and everything became calm again. The star chart disappeared, and if he wanted to go out to fight again, he would have to wait 6 hours. At this time, smoke rose in the village, and some adults led their children to the lake to fish. When the children saw Han Fei, they were full of curiosity. A little girl ran up to Han Fei with a pancake in her hand and handed the pancake to Han Fei. Uncle, have breakfast. Han Fei took it and said with a smile, Call me brother. The little girl was at a loss and looked at her father next to her, not knowing what to do. The father laughed and said, Just call me uncle. I'm only 20 years old this year. The little girl seemed to have an idea and shouted at Han Fei, Uncle. Han Fei laughed, picked up the cake, and took a bite. Han Fei asked, What's your name? The little girl said childishly, My name is Zhang Qiao Qiao. Han Fei looked at Jiang Chao, and Jiang Chao nodded slightly. I'm a descendant of the Zhang family from the Thousand-Star City. Han Fei touched his nose. Although he didn't get along with the Zhang family, he didn't want to distance himself from a child. Han Fei said, Qiao Qiao. Don't go fishing with your father today. Uncle, I have fish here, very, very big fish. I'll treat you to fish. As he spoke, Han Fei waved his hand, and a silver-scaled fish more than 20 meters long fell to the ground, shocking the little girl and her father. Wow, what a big fish! Jiang Chao, Yang Xie, and the others were all stunned and speechless. You're here for the map. Why do you have fish with you? But in the next moment, a big pot, a barbecue grill, a mess of seasonings, and a pile of chopsticks appeared. Everybody was dumbfounded. Yang Xie's lips twitched. Little junior brother. You brought food with you when you explored the relics? The third chapter? Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 950. The little girl was stunned by the super big fish that Han Fei took out. With a swish, she ran into the village. Han Fei? Yang Xie said, Little junior brother, they are all ordinary people. I'm afraid they can't even eat one bite of a creature of this level. Han Fei smiled and said, Senior brother, this is simple. First, extract the spiritual qi and energy from the fish's body. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't extract it directly. He stepped on the ground and a spirit-gathering array appeared. A large amount of spiritual energy gushed out of this silver-scaled fish. As for the energy, this was also simple. He activated the void fishing art, and a large amount of energy was extracted in an instant. However, practicing the void fishing art during the day would inevitably lead to the descent of heavenly fire. Fortunately, Han Fei extracted the energy very quickly, and it only took him 1 second. But Ren Tianfei suddenly said, "There is something wrong with your technique. Don't show it easily in the future, lest people think about it." Han Fei was stunned. Did Oldren feel it? Jiang Chao glanced at the sky. Although there was an invisible array outside the floating island, there was obviously something wrong with the morning light just now. If he guessed right, Han Fei should have some kind of powerful technique. Jiang Chao said, "Senior Ren is right. After all, these people used to be opponents and each of them is extraordinary. Your behavior just now has already aroused some people's speculation." Han Fei grinned and said, "Okay, I'll be careful next time." After a while, when Han Fei just started to cut the meat, he found a group of children running here as fast as they could. "Wow, it's really a big fish. But it looks even bigger than my great-grandfather's contractual spiritual beast." "Nonsense. Contractual spiritual beasts can become twice as big as they are now." "Are we eating contractual spiritual beasts?" "Idiot, this is a fish, not a contractual spiritual beast." "Is this fish dead? Let me poke it." For a time, the children were chattering. Many adults, hearing that they were going to eat a big fish, also ran over to watch. After a while, there were already a lot of people around. All kinds of exclamations rose and fell. They had never eaten such a big fish before. Because the spirit chi on the floating island was very thin, the fish that could survive here were of very low levels, generally only at the 3rd or 4th level. At this moment, the shadow of the saber moved about, and a large number of scales were removed. No matter how bad it was still the scales of a silver-scaled fish. Now, they were picked up by the children and treated as toys. An adult hurriedly stopped him. "Put it down, these scales are sharp. Brat, you don't want your hand anymore? Little fish, don't move, give me." During the playful scolding, the fish oil and various seasonings had been poured into the pot. Rip! The oil splashed. Amidst the steam, the fragrance wafted. Not to mention the children and adults, even the experts such as Jiang Chao and Yang Xie couldn't help but swallow. Jiang Chao was surprised. "Aren't these the little spirit fruits from the plantation? Why does it taste so good?" Han Fei smiled. "Senior uncle, I forgot to tell you that I actually have a hidden identity." Jiang Chao's face slightly changed. "What identity?" Han Fei said proudly, "The best chef in the world." Jiang Chao, everyone was wondering why this fragrance smelled so good. Only Ren Tianfei didn't respond at all, just staring at Han Fei's pot. Han Fei said, "Old Ren, why don't you have any reaction at all?" Ren Tianfei snorted. "I can't smell it." Han Fei and Jiang Chao were taken aback. "Can't smell it?" Han Fei immediately realized that Ren Tianfei's body was probably not alive at all, but a corpse, just like when he was sitting on the steps. Figuring this out, Han Fei felt much more at ease. If Ren Tianfei's body was just a corpse, then there was no reason for it to carry any luck. So, he wouldn't compete with him for anything. Han Fei immediately said to him via voice transmission, "Then look at my means. Let your real body do it." Ren Tianfei sneered. "My real body? I can't contact my real body. Forget it, I'm tired. I'm going for a walk." Ren Tianfei left. As a corpse, it was indeed quite uncomfortable to watch others eat. He couldn't smell or taste, however, Han Fei didn't care about him. The fish had been put into the pot, and Han Fei also put some mushrooms, seaweed, shells, and other things in it. A large cauldron that was nearly 5 meters in size was now filled to the brim. Next to it, many children and adults were looking forward to it. After a while, the hot pot was boiled, the spiritual fire was put away, the light was dazzling, and the fragrance spread for dozens of kilometers. Han Fei smiled and said, "Let's eat. Come on, Xiao Xiao, pass me the bowl." The little girl stood in the front. In other words, a group of children stood in the front, and the adults lined up behind them. Han Fei acquiesced. Everyone can eat it. It's just a fish. There are still thousands of fish in Forge the Universe. Slurp. Looking at the large piece of fish hot pot in the small bowl, Zhang Qiaoqiao couldn't help sniffing and said sweetly, "Thank you, uncle." Behind her, a boy raised his bowl and shouted, "Uncle, I want it too." "Me too. I want a big bowl. I want the fish's mouth." In a moment, the 5-meter-big hot pot was divided up. As a chef, seeing others immersed in their own food and unable to extricate themselves was a very fulfilling thing. Jiang Chao smacked his lips and said, Han Fei said with a smile, "Junior uncle, don't panic. Those without spiritual energy can be given to them. Let's eat the food with spiritual energy." Half an hour later, Jiang Chao, Yang Xie, and Han Fei gathered around a smaller hot pot and began to eat eagerly. They ate until their mouths were covered with grease. Anyway, there were 3 men and no girls, so they didn't care. As for the other cultivators here, although they guessed that it would be delicious, no one came. After all, the sea-quelling painting was expected to be collected. At this time, they came to eat and drink. If they could really go out, they would inevitably be embarrassed when they met in the future. Yang Xie was shocked. "Little junior brother, tell me honestly, is the food in the Thug Academy all like this now?" Han Fei grinned and said, "Senior brother, it's nothing. Now, the food in our academy is unparalleled in the world. There are many kinds of food." Yang Xie took a sip of wine, a little fascinated. He hadn't gone out for so many years, and the school seemed to have undergone earth-shaking changes. Jiang Chao said, "Han Fei, how did you meet Senior Ren?" The moment Ren Tianfei appeared, Han Fei felt that since this old guy didn't hide it from him, he didn't care. And they were all his friends, so Han Fei didn't need to hide it from them. Han Fei set up a soundproof array and said slowly, "Old Ren. He's my half-master." Jiang Chao and Yang Xie were shocked. This was a venerable. How could Han Fei's identity be simple if he had a venerable as his teacher? However, Jiang Chao didn't ask much. Everyone had their own secrets. The Thug Academy had always only accepted heavenly talents, so they generally never asked students about their secrets. Yang Xie said, "Little junior brother, is it difficult to seize luck? Are the people who came to grab the painting this time very strong?" Han Fei thought for a while and nodded slightly. "In general, very strong. There should be many heavenly talents who can fight law enforcers." Jiang Chao said lightly, "Can fight law enforcers? They are indeed very strong. However, there should be many such heavenly talents. It seems that the strength of some people should be more than this." When the 3 of them were halfway through the meal, suddenly, Han Fei saw a familiar figure appear at the end of the road in the village. Han Fei raised his eyelids. "Yushire? It's only been 2 days. Does this mean that Yushire has passed the mist of 9 sounds?" Han Fei couldn't help taking a breath, and his evaluation of Yushire in his heart was raised again. This guy who didn't seem to be outstanding and usually just squatted at the door of his house, looking at others and saying, "I'm so envious," was clearly a top heavenly talent. Except for Ren Tianfei, Yushire was the second to come here. At this moment, a group of people followed behind him. When he saw Han Fei, he grinned. Yang Xie's eyes flickered. This group of people is really strong. They arrived so soon, only 1 day later than little junior brother. Jiang Chao frowned and said, "Han Fei, which family is this guy from?" Han Fei shook his head. "Not from the 1,000-star city. He's an independent cultivator." When Jiang Chao heard that Yushire was an independent cultivator, he immediately took a deep breath. It was not common for an independent cultivator to stand out. This showed that the other party had some mysterious opportunities. Han Fei smiled and said, "Shire, come and have some?" But Yushire was as straightforward as ever. This showed that he was not affected by the mist of 9 sounds. He passed the grand emotionless sound on his own. Looking at Yushire's clothes, Han Fei knew that Yushire must have paid a big price. Next to the hot pot, Han Fei looked at Yushire and asked, "Is there anyone else behind you?" Yushire shook his head. It's difficult to pass. They are still trying. Han Fei said lightly, Shire, after eating, let's have a fight in the afternoon. Yu Shire smiled. But in the distance, some people were discussing. Here comes another one. I'm afraid that Han Fei has met his match. Another one can pass the mist of 9 sounds. He's extraordinary. Until now, I still haven't figured out how to pass the grand emotionless sound. It seems that our talents are still far from his. Someone sighed. There will definitely be a fight between the two of them. I just don't know if there will be a third person. For asking for monthly votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 951. Now, Han Fei increasingly felt that being born in a good family didn't necessarily mean that one was talented. Of course, there were advantages, but they were often not as firm as those who had come this far on their own. Yu Shire was not from the Thousand-Star City. He seemed to be from a village? Yes, a village, not a town. He was somewhat similar to Qin Chen. Yu Shire was hot-headed and reckless. Han Fei could tell that from the battle he fought once. Want to win? He had to be reckless. This was different from his attitude towards those people in the Thousand-Star City. Han Fei felt that although people like Yu Shire were secretive, their nature had long been revealed. At this moment, from a height of 1 kilometer, only 2 small dots could be seen from the ground. For these ordinary people and children on the ground, they were naturally envious of them. They also thought that one day they could stand above this void and shake the world. After all, they had heard too many stories about the outside world. For example, what creatures were there in the sea? What was the real floating island like? How colorful was the life outside? However, Han Fei was the first to come in. Moreover, he even performed it exaggeratedly. Therefore, Han Fei had long received the real blessings of these ordinary people. Psychologically speaking, these people preferred Han Fei to win. About 300 strong people at this moment. Some were sitting on their houses, some were standing in secluded fields, and some were beside those ordinary people. Because they knew how terrifying the battle between the strong was. Before entering here, these people all thought that as long as they came in, they would have a chance to get the sea-quelling painting. They thought that they would also kill until the sky turned dark and the earth turned dark, and blood flowed like a river. At that time, the ground of the floating island was almost broken. Now, it was just restored after reconstruction. But in the end, they found that there was no chance. In the sky, Han Fei smiled and said, Shire, we didn't fight in the Empyrean waterfall. I didn't expect that we would fight here. Since you're here, let's have a good fight. Yu Shire nodded with a smile. Okay. After saying this, the armor box beside Yu Shire slowly opened. He had seen Han Fei's strength on the ancient battlefield. Han Fei's speed was faster than his, and his strength seemed to be stronger than his, not to mention his physique. If he couldn't beat Han Fei in these aspects, then he could only compete in endurance. Yu Shire intended to compete with endurance, and Han Fei also thought so. He could not use the sacrificial punch, at least not right from the start, because once he made a move, he was likely to kill Yu Shire. There was another situation that was even more terrifying. Once he used it and failed to kill Yu Shire, he would be in danger. After all, Yu Shire was an armorist. If there were hundreds of layers of shields, would the sacrificing punch be able to break them? That was also a problem. Secondly, the reason why he didn't want to use the sacrificing punch was that he didn't know what level Yu Shire's spiritual beast, the immortal golden serpent, was. If it really couldn't be killed, wouldn't it be a waste to use it? He didn't use the void lines out of respect for Yu Shire. But if he had to, he would definitely use the void lines. He had to get the sea-quelling painting. Whoosh! Whoosh! Han Fei's figure flickered, and in the armor box of Yu Shire's soldiers, there was a roaring knife. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't look down on this attack. After all, this was a semi-divine weapon, and Yu Shire had the habit of blowing up semi-divine weapons. Devil transformation. Bang! The fist mark blasted out, and above the sky, the golden light was dazzling. Boom! Han Fei was speechless. You blew up your weapons with the first attack. So, you have an endless supply of semi-divine weapons? Han Fei was shaken back. However, the explosion of the semi-divine weapons could no longer hurt him. If it was before he comprehended the invincible heart, the explosion of the semi-divine weapons could hurt him. But now it was absolutely impossible. It would only leave a few scratches and bruises. How could that be regarded as an injury? Bam, bam, bam. The fist mark rumbled because Han Fei saw that there were hundreds of semi-divine weapons in Yushire's armor box. Each of them had a faint red light. Han Fei recognized this feeling. It was Yushire's bravery and fearlessness in battle. Han Fei grinned. Shire, it's impossible for you to defeat me by blowing up your semi-divine weapons. Are you sure you want to destroy so many weapons? Han Fei guessed that Yushire must have found a place on the ancient battlefield where there were a large number of semi-divine weapons. Compared with the sea-quelling painting, the semi-divine weapons were not worth mentioning. Even if they were all exhausted, it didn't matter. This should be Yushire's real intention. Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei flashed wildly in the air, his figure floating. What he had to do was to kill this guy in close combat. The fist mark was like a dragon, excited and crazy. At this speed, the armorist's torrent of knives and swords couldn't even hit him at all. Almost in a few seconds, Han Fei was already close to him. Yushire took out another divine weapon. Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. This weapon was at least a mid-quality divine weapon, which could seriously threaten him. Han Fei shouted, "Nine Mansions Dragon Seal." A dragon roar sounded. Under the pressure of Han Fei's Nine Mansions Dragon Roar, the greatest power it could produce now was about 10 waves of gravity. However, Yushire suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood, which was burning. The power on that long rod was so mysterious that even the void was faintly distorted. Rumble! Clouds and mist rose into the sky, and a terrifying power rushed down from the sky. And those who had already been prepared shouted one after another and rose into the air to protect this impact wave. Otherwise, these ordinary people wouldn't be able to survive at all. Below, those ordinary people actually couldn't see anything at all. They could only see the golden light shining in the sky. The ripples visible to the naked eye swept from the sky to the ground, which made them hold their breath. They must go out. In the future, they might also obtain this power. Above the sky, Han Fei and Yushire flew backward at the same time. The terrifying power of almost 10 waves of gravity made the golden seal in Han Fei's hand directly burst into pieces. It couldn't bear it at all. At the moment when Han Fei flew backward, the 100 weapons air-piercing strike was activated. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The 100 weapons exploded, and a terrifying wave swept across the floating island. All the houses and fields that weren't protected collapsed directly. Some of the boulders were crushed to dust. Yushire vomited blood, and a golden dragon appeared behind him. His injuries were recovering rapidly. And Han Fei couldn't be seen at all in the explosion of the 100 weapons. Below, Yang Xie looked solemn. "Little junior brother, do you have enough spiritual energy and energy to resist this kind of power?" Jiang Chao also looked solemn. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be enough. As long as Han Fei tries to resist it, it will consume a lot of spiritual energy and energy. However, the road to the invincible realm is not so simple. Han Fei was the first to reach the floating island. How can he be dealt with by ordinary means? And those ordinary people who were protected by the strong couldn't believe this kind of terrifying power at all. Some children cried when they saw their house turned into powder in the blink of an eye. "Dad, our house is gone." "Mom, our house collapsed." An adult comforted him. "Baby, be good. We're leaving here in a few days. Don't cry. Remember this scene. This is the world of the strong. In the future, you will also become strong and stand in this high sky." The remaining power dissipated. In the roaring explosion wave, a golden man appeared, stepping in the air, his hair scattered, but his momentum didn't decrease at all. Yushire grinned and sighed. "So strong." Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei rushed away again. The golden fist mark blasted through the void, the air was ignited, and the huge fist mark crossed half of the sky. A golden flood dragon appeared in the air. Yushire rushed at it head-on, and the divine weapon in his hand emitted a dazzling light. Boom! Without any fancy combat skills, it was a head-on collision. Han Fei punched more than 30 times in a row and barely resisted Yushire's attack. The semi-divine weapon almost hit him. Han Fei gasped for air and grinned. 12, can you still hold on? Yushire's answer was very simple. Han Fei grinned. He hadn't refined the cosmic sword yet, so he could only use Snowmorn. Draw the sword. The world was illuminated by a flash of white light. Below, everyone immediately shouted, "Not good! Attack with all your strength and use secret methods to block it." In the sky, Yushire shouted, "Explode!" To Han Fei's surprise, this guy actually exploded his divine weapon with the help of his secret method. Could it block Snowmorn? Chilla! The remaining power of the divine weapon's explosion was finally shattered by Snowmorn. However, this also greatly reduced the attack power of Snowmorn. After all, Han Fei couldn't exert the full power of Snowmorn. And Yushire was the same as Chao Jiren. Chao Jiren was fighting Han Fei with all her strength, and Yushire was fighting Han Fei with all his strength. Bam! From the armor box, a divine shield flew out. Clang! The sound lingered. However, the low-quality divine weapon was not strong enough, so it could only barely block the remaining power of Snowmorn. Gotcha! Yushire's second low-quality divine weapon shattered. In an instant, he vomited blood and smashed to the edge of the floating island like a meteorite. Boom! The ground was shaking, and a crack ran for more than 30 kilometers. Yushire knelt in a big pit. However, the golden flood dragon roared. Yushire was covered in blood and his whole body was on fire. He seemed to want to launch the last blow. Someone said angrily, "Is he crazy?" Someone was horrified. "He'll die. The winner has been decided. Why is he still fighting like this?" Jiang Chao sighed. "He can withstand such a terrifying power. His spiritual beast is unusual, isn't it?" Yang Xie swallowed and said, "Now I'm sure that the person who came this time is really strong." Blood flowed from the corner of Han Fei's mouth. Seeing this scene, he had to sigh that this guy was really stubborn. Even if he won, so what? Do you think you can steal other people's luck? However, at this time, Han Fei certainly couldn't flinch. He stepped in the air and a large spirit-gathering formation appeared. In an instant, heavenly fire descended and instantly burned Han Fei. Han Fei's energy was exhausted. He couldn't eat spiritual fruits so quickly, and he had plenty of spiritual energy, so he needed the power of the scorching sun in the daytime. At this moment, he didn't care whether anyone found out or not. As long as he could win, he didn't care. Jiang Chao was shocked. Attracting the scorching sun in the daytime. No, Han Fei, stop. Yang Xie had already flown to the sky but was blocked by Ren Tianfei. Yang Xie said, "Senior." Ren Tianfei shook his head. "This kid is so cruel to himself. But it's okay. It's just attracting the scorching sun's essence. It's nothing." Yang Xie was speechless. How the fuck is this nothing? However, in just 2 seconds, the beam of light disappeared, and Han Fei was bathed in flames. His skin cracked, but he didn't care. Yushire dared to risk his life, but Han Fei didn't. At that moment, in the big pit, a golden dragon broke through the air. This was Yushire's last blow. If he tried again, he would no longer be able to move. "Break it!" Han Fei roared and blasted out the invincible fist marks as if they were free, blasting the sky and making the void unstable. The strong masters all guarded their own territory, as long as they could protect their masters and their heirs. Looking at the shattered dragon shadow in the fist shadows, Ren Tianfei shook his head slightly. "You're too soft-hearted. Whether it's the invincible fist mark or the sacrificing punch, as long as I condense them, that brute can't resist them." Han Fei gasped. High in the sky, Han Fei glanced at Ren Tianfei. "He's my friend. I want monthly votes. Hurry up and grab the votes." Moi, end of this chapter. Chapter 952. On the ground. Although Han Fei won by a fluke, he was covered with bruises. However, Yushire in the pit was even more miserable. Even with the help of the immortal golden serpent, he was only slowly recovering. Han Fei cast a divine healing technique on Yushire and grinned. In this world, who else but me can do it? If I say I want it, no one can stop me. Yushire couldn't speak at this moment. His mouth was full of blood foam and pieces of internal organs. If it were an ordinary person, he would have been half crippled if not dead. This guy was actually recovering. Even Han Fei was shocked by his tenacious vitality. Jiang Chao, Yang Xie, and a group of strong masters all rushed over. Looking at Yushire in the pit, they sighed slightly in their hearts. If they could only get the sea-quelling painting with this level of strength, they really didn't have a chance. The two people in front of them were two lunatics. In the battle, they gave up their combat skills and fought head-on. It was a competition of whose fist was harder and whose endurance was stronger. Obviously, Yushire was defeated. However, in the eyes of everyone, Han Fei didn't seem to be any better. Han Fei's legs were trembling. He sat down on the edge of the pit, took out 7 or 8 spiritual fruits, and stuffed them into his mouth. Seeing this scene, many people were speechless. They didn't know Han Fei's specialty. Even if you eat so many spiritual fruits, can you absorb them? Jiang Chao said, "Let's go. The winner has been decided. This sea-quelling painting, the Thug Academy will get it." Someone frowned and said, "Han Fei, can you recover?" Han Fei grinned. "I can still fight one more time." Immediately, that person was speechless. I asked for nothing. As for those houses, fields, and so on, they were gone. As long as he could go out, it didn't matter. After an hour, Han Fei had recovered, which made Jiang Chao and Yang Xie a little speechless. After such a battle, he only rested for an hour? Even Ren Tianfei was a little speechless. My indestructible body doesn't seem to be so strong. Immediately, Ren Tianfei concluded that Han Fei had an opportunity that he didn't know. Anyway, he clearly knew that Han Fei's indestructible body hadn't broken through to the 3rd level. As for the 2nd level, even if he was at the peak, it would be impossible for him to recover so easily under such intense battles. Ren Tianfei couldn't help but feel that his disciple was not bad at all. And Yushire, who was continuously cast the divine healing technique by Han Fei, finally recovered after 3 hours. Yushire dragged his tired body to the lake and sat on the ground. "Han Fei, you are really strong. I can't stop you." Han Fei sneered. "If you hadn't risked your life, you wouldn't have been able to resist it." Yushire smiled innocently and then said, "Of all of us, only one can compete with you." Jiang Chao and Yang Xie were both stunned to hear that. What the heck? In this case, could anyone compete with Han Fei? Han Fei snorted. "Chao Tian? If he comes, he loses." Not long after Yushire recovered, it was dark. During this time, no one else could enter. That was what confused Han Fei. A fool like Chao Tian would only be stronger than Yushire. There was no reason that he couldn't get in. Then, there was only one reason. He was helping Chao Qiu. Han Fei had never understood why so many heavenly talents of the Chao family pinned all their hopes on Chao Qiu. Could it be that Chao Qiu was more powerful than Chao Tian? Thinking of Chao Qiu's face, Han Fei immediately shook his head. Could that little fatty fight as hard as Yushire? No way. He had no chance at all. The stars appeared again. Yushire was very curious about what Han Fei would do. Han Fei appeared on the surface of the lake, twisted his body, and finally found a place and stood still. Han Fei waved his hand and disappeared. Yushire's eyes widened. After a long time, Yushire said, "I can't learn this." Ren Tianfei sneered. "Nonsense, of course you can't learn it. You're just stubborn." Yushire knew Ren Tianfei. That blackmailer. He just didn't know that this person had arrived earlier than him. However, Yushire thought, since Han Fei disappeared, this person must have lost. Otherwise, it should be him who disappeared at this moment. Yushire chuckled. "I can't be envious of their talent. I can only try my best." In the midst of 9 sounds, this time Han Fei met Mo Fian. This woman seemed to be immersed in a kind of joy. What was she so happy about? Suddenly, she found that her position had changed and she appeared directly above the river. Mo Fian looked at Han Fei, who suddenly appeared, and her face suddenly darkened. In terms of normal strength, she was no match for this person. Besides, Mo Fian had long discovered that the 9 sounds would not directly give out illusions, and everything seemed to be real. Then, the Han Fei in front of her should also be real. But why was Han Fei here? Mo Fian asked. How did you get here? What do you want? Han Fei grinned. What do I want? I'm here to take your luck. Mo Fian narrowed her eyes. Others might not know, but as a member of a big family in the Thousand-Star City, she naturally knew some secrets. She had also been told about the luck of the sea-quelling painting. At this moment, Han Fei said he was here to take her luck. Why did she meet Han Fei in the mist of 9 sounds? Immediately, Mo Fian's face changed drastically. Could it be that Han Fei had walked through the mist of 9 sounds and obtained a kind of control? Since he had walked through, if he could master the sea-quelling painting, then he definitely wouldn't need to attack her. The 5 legendary creatures would directly recognize him as their master. At that time, if he wanted to kill them, would he still need to do it himself? And now Han Fei suddenly appeared and said he wanted to take her luck. Mo Fian instantly realized that the theory of luck was true. Only by gathering everyone's luck could Han Fei truly control the sea-quelling painting. Mo Fian immediately sneered. I won't let you get what you want. Han Fei chuckled. Do you think I'm negotiating with you? Anyway, I've always been ready to kill you. Swish. A terrifying golden fist exploded the river. After a while, Han Fei appeared on the lake. If nothing unexpected happened, he had already obtained another piece of luck. It turned out that Mo Fian was also very strong. With a divine weapon in her hand, although her combat power was not as good as Sun Mu's, she was not far behind. In the end, Han Fei still used Snowmorn. If nothing went wrong, the fact that Snowmorn was a sea-quelling bizarre treasure couldn't be hidden anymore. However, it didn't matter. It wouldn't be too outrageous to have Snowmorn. After all, after this battle, the sea-quelling painting would be his. It was also a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Maybe it was even the human sacred treasure that Chen Huangyan mentioned. Yang Xie asked, Little junior brother, how did it go? Han Fei stuffed a few energy fruits into his mouth and rested for a while. It's not a big problem. I'll continue in 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, Han Fei disappeared. Half an hour later, Han Fei came back. Li Hai and Li Baizhou were defeated by Han Fei relatively easily. The sea-quelling painting could only be held by one person, so the 2 brothers were separated and defeated by Han Fei separately. This pair of brothers had a strong tacit understanding when they were together. It was as if they had a kind of telepathic cooperation. However, once they were separated, their combat power was much weaker than Mo Fian's. Therefore, defeating them was by far the easiest battle for Han Fei. Half an hour later, Han Fei was dripping with blood. Half of a mountain had collapsed, and there were fist marks everywhere. Lying in the pit, Chen Aochen grunted, You didn't try your best? Han Fei smiled and said, Actually, you are already very strong. Your strength should be on par with Chao Jiaren's. Chao Jiaren? How is that possible? Chen Aochen looked astonished. He was belligerent and didn't think he was inferior to Han Fei, Chao Tian, and Tangu. But he didn't expect that Han Fei's evaluation was similar to Chao Jiaren's. Chao Jiaren was strong, but not to this extent, right? Han Fei thought, what do you know? Do you know that Chao Jiaren is actually a soul warrior? Han Fei didn't intend to explain. It would be best if Chen Aochen challenged Chao Jiaren. Let them fight. Han Fei punched again and Chen Aochen disappeared, sent away by the mist of 9 sounds. The midnight. Han Fei had defeated Mo Fian, the Li brothers, Chen Aochen, Yui, Gong Yuehan, and others in a row. However, he didn't meet Sun Mu, who he wanted to beat up the most. Neither did his 2 senior brothers, nor did Chao Tian. At this moment, Han Fei fished again. As a result, a star was taken away by him. Han Fei didn't know what happened. He was at a loss. Ren Tianfei said, Did you forget that when climbing the steps, more than 10 people failed? The luck of those failures gathered together, so you were lucky enough to take them all. Han Fei frowned. No. I've already fished out all the stars in the 8 diagrams. Why haven't some people come out yet? Look at it yourself. Only those who enter the mist of 9 sounds will appear. Those who don't enter naturally don't appear. Han Fei walked around the 8 diagrams several times. After making sure that he didn't miss anything, he paid attention to several other places. But immediately Han Fei thought of something. Since there was no one in the mist of 9 sounds, what about other places? Could someone be in the 5 legendary masters' places? However, Han Fei didn't seem to see any arrays in those places. A forest, a sea of fire, a sea area. It seemed that only the Jade Pen Peak and Earth 9 had special geographical features. After a while, Han Fei found the Jade Pen Peak according to the star map. However, the reflection of the stars here seemed to be normal. When Han Fei found Earth 9, his eyes lit up. There were 6 dots. Yes, this meant that there were 6 people. Moreover, there were 5 people gathered together, and only one person was alone. Han Fei couldn't help frowning. Are they enemies or acquaintances? However, he thought that he would only be able to catch one person at a time, so he wouldn't be able to catch all of them. So, Han Fei didn't hesitate and grabbed the one who was alone. Swish. The scene in front of Han Fei changed, and he was stunned. What's going on? Shouldn't the scene be changed at will? At this moment, he found that he was standing in the territory of Earth 9. Big Yellow was playing with a group of wild cats, and Granny Een was sitting on a fallen dead tree. Han Fei's sudden appearance stunned both of them. Big Yellow shouted, "Han Fei, I found my own kind." Chapter 953. Seeing this harmonious scene, Han Fei was also dumbfounded. Didn't Granny Een come to find the painting? Why did she bring the big cat here to play? Granny Een said, "How did you appear out of thin air?" Earth 9 also looked at Han Fei curiously. "I didn't sense how you appeared. You must have come from the 9 sounds mist, right?" Han Fei shook his head. "I came from the island." Granny Een was slightly taken aback. "Did you go to the floating island?" Han Fei nodded. "Senior, I'm here for luck." Granny Een took a deep look at Han Fei. "It seems that you have found a way to obtain the sea-quelling painting. How can I give you the luck?" Han Fei was slightly taken aback. Wasn't she going to fight? Han Fei said, "Either win or lose, or fight to the death." Granny Een sighed. "No wonder." Clang about a few hundred miles away, there was a shockwave that spread over. With a flick of Earth 9's tail, an invisible barrier appeared, blocking the impact force. Han Fei looked into the distance and asked in surprise, "Senior, what's going on over there?" Earth 9 said, "A few people ran into each other here and were fighting." Han Fei froze for a moment and was about to propose a fight with Granny Een to see what was going on next door, when he heard Granny Een say, "Okay, I admit defeat. Is that okay?" Han Fei was stunned. "You admit defeat?" The old lady smiled and said, "In fact, I don't have this sea token. I can't walk through the 9 sounds mist. What's the use of this luck? I just killed a person in the underground city and got this sea token from him. I was curious, so I came in to have a look." Han Fei, Big Yellow raised its head and meowed. "Han Fei, do you want to fight me?" Han Fei scratched his head. "Granny Een, can we be a little more serious? You can just pretend. I challenge you. If you admit defeat, I'll leave." The old lady nodded slightly. "It's up to you." Han Fei immediately looked straight at the old lady. "I formally challenge you." Granny Een looked at Han Fei seriously. "I admit defeat." Han Fei blinked. "Should I go back now?" With a buzz, Han Fei disappeared. On the floating island, Jiang Chao asked in surprise, "So fast this time?" Han Fei said with a smile, "I didn't fight this time. I admitted defeat. Wait, let me scoop up some more." In the valley, the green door rang like a bell and exploded. The mountain collapsing fist in tent was smashed into pieces by the huge green door. Wang Dashui and Chao Tian were fighting, and half of the mountain next to them had collapsed. At this moment, Wang Dashui was covered in blood. His arms were dripping with blood and his muscles were torn. On the other side, the sword will soar into the sky, and the void was full of sword shadows. With a superior-grade divine weapon, who else could it be but Sun Mu? There were hundreds of places in the sword energy that shook the void. A knife light flashed in the void, but no figure appeared. Chu Linyuan's voice sounded, "Huh. If not for that divine weapon, I would have chopped you up like cutting vegetables." At the foot of the mountain, Chao Qiu shouted, "Brother! It's fine if we don't fight over it." Chao Tian laughed. "This matter involves King Qing, he must fight for it." Suddenly, the five people's vision blurred. Then, the scene reversed and they appeared in midair. The five of them were still dumbfounded, and then they saw Han Fei standing in the air with a dumbfounded look, his eyes wide open. Han Fei was speechless. Did they really get all of it? However, among these five people, Wang Dashui and Chu Linyuan were both here, which showed that they hadn't been defeated before. It stood to reason that as long as they defeated one person, they would take that person's luck. This was also the reason why Han Fei didn't meet Wu Ming and the others. Perhaps, when they were at the Jade Pen Peak, their luck had already been taken away by him. But the five legendary creatures didn't know this. They just wanted more people to pass so they could recognize 1, 5, 7, or 8 people. But in fact, once they lost their luck, they wouldn't have a chance to enter the floating island again. Although Han Fei hadn't seen what luck looked like until now. However, every time he won, he would be sucked back to the floating island. This meant that he had obtained his luck. The only thing that surprised Han Fei was Sun Mu. How did he end up with Chao Tian and the others? Wang Dashui and Chu Linyuan immediately rushed over. Little junior brother. Han Fei hurriedly cast the divine healing technique on Wang Dashui and couldn't help asking, "Senior brothers, what's going on?" Chu Linyuan explained, "I've been traveling with you. This time, I just happened to meet them, and I've been fighting them off and on for a day." Han Fei twitched the corner of his mouth. "You've been fighting them for a day?" Wang Dashui said, "The Chao family is very strong. I can't hold on any longer." Chu Linyuan added, "That guy who uses a sword is relying on his weapon. Otherwise, I would have won." Han Fei suddenly looked at Chao Qiu. "Chao Qiu, I challenge you. If you admit defeat, I won't embarrass you, okay?" Chao Qiu was about to speak, but Chao Tian looked serious. "Don't speak. He wants to take your luck." Chao Tian looked at Han Fei indifferently. "If you want to fight him fair and square. Why lie to him?" Sun Mu shouted, "Chao Tian, it's almost time to unseal him. Otherwise, we will definitely lose." Chao Tian's face darkened. He felt that he had overestimated the Thug Academy. But in the end he still underestimated them. He didn't know what level of divine weapon Wang Dashui's big green door was. Chao Tian even suspected that it was a fragment of a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. After the battle, he found that this person's ability to resist attacks was too strong, and he could also absorb energy from the void and cultivate a strange golden body. He only had one trump card left, but that trump card shouldn't be used on Wang Dashui, but on Han Fei. This was also the reason why Sun Mu joined the battle. If they couldn't beat Wang Dashui and Chu Linyuan, they wouldn't be able to get the sea-quelling painting because they didn't have enough luck, so they joined forces. Once they beat Han Fei, it would be easy to get rid of Sun Mu. However, at this moment, Han Fei arrived. And Han Fei came to seize luck. This meant that Han Fei had already arrived at the floating island and knew the use of luck. Chao Qiu looked dumbfounded. "What do you mean? Brother, is there a seal in your body?" Chao Tian shook his head slightly. "Not in my body but in yours." Chao Qiu was stunned. "How can there be a seal in my body?" Chao Tian sighed slightly. "Otherwise, why would your sister and I fight for this opportunity for you? You don't like fighting since you were a child, and because of that incident, you completely hate the big families. By rights, you shouldn't bear this burden. However, you have the bloodline of the god of war. This is an ancient divine bloodline, which is rare for thousands of years. Do you know it now?" Chao Qiu was stunned. "What the hell? I have the bloodline of the god of war? Are you kidding me?" On the opposite side, Han Fei and the others were also dumbfounded. Han Fei looked at Chu Linyuan. Senior brother, what is the bloodline of the god of war? Chu Linyuan shook his head. I don't know. I've never heard of it. Sun Mu said with a smile, the ancestor of the Chao family is said to have reached the supreme realm above the king realm. The bloodline of the god of war is really rare. Otherwise, why do you think the Chao family wants Chao Qiu to get the sea-quelling painting? Han Fei took a breath. It seems very powerful. Senior brother, let me handle Chao Qiu. Chao Qiu suddenly roared, Don't. What are you doing? Oh no. Hey brother. Han Fei can slap me to death with one slap. I don't want to. Chao Tian sighed, and a golden bead appeared in his hand. He looked at Han Fei. We must fight for this painting. If you want to get the luck, do it fair and square. Suddenly Han Fei shouted, Wait a minute. Chao Tian? Han Fei suddenly stepped forward. Chao Tian, does your Chao family want Chao Qiu to get the painting? Since you are sure you can unlock the seal, why are you still meddling in this? Let's put it this way, except for the 5 of you present, I have taken everyone's luck. I have solved most of the mysteries of the sea-quelling painting. In this case, I will deal with Sun Mu first, and you can give your opportunity to Chao Qiu. My senior brother will definitely give me the opportunity. I will fight Chao Qiu alone. Chu Linyuan smiled. I have no objection. Wang Dashui nodded. Little junior brother is right. Sun Mu immediately said angrily, Chao Tian, Han Fei is cunning. Don't trust him. However, Chao Tian was silent for a moment. Okay, but you have to take Chu Linyuan's luck first. Han Fei smiled and said, Wait for me for a while. Of course, Han Fei wouldn't agree to Chao Tian's request. If Chao Qiu was really as powerful as Chao Tian said, the two sides were now in a balance. Once this balance was broken, who knew what trump cards the opponent had? Han Fei immediately shouted towards the sky, Senior Earth 9, please show up and help me. Han Fei wasn't sure where he was now. However, creatures like Earth 9 couldn't be estimated with common sense. What if he could hear him? Han Fei shouted, 5 seniors, who can hear me? Come and see me, I'm coming. Han Fei had just continued to shout when a pangolin emerged from the void and appeared in midair. Ah! Han Fei said in astonishment, so fast. Earth 9 said lightly, the inside of the painting is different from the outside world. As long as we are not in the midst of 9 sounds or on that island, the 5 of us can hear you. Buzz. A ball of flame popped out. The fire seed had arrived. Chirp, birds chirped. The water swamp had arrived. Hiss, vines stretched out from the void. The tree spirit had arrived. Swish. A long knife fell from the sky. The punishing saber had arrived. Only then did Han Fei know that the punishing saber turned out to be a knife. Before the straw hut opened, Han Fei thought there was a creature sitting inside. The punishing saber trembled and burst into laughter. Ha! We all heard what you just said. With us here, no matter who has a trump card, it's useless. Just do whatever you want. Chapter 954. When Han Fei appeared in the territory of Earth 9 and asked Granny Yin to admit defeat, Punishing Saber and the other 4 knew that Han Fei was robbing luck. Why did he rob luck? Of course, it was to collect the painting. What else could it be? However, they were a little puzzled. Shouldn't he rob luck on the island? Could it be that he could only rob luck outside the mist of 9 sounds? Of course, they had also heard about Chao Qiu's so-called bloodline of the god of war. The bloodline inheritance above the king level couldn't be underestimated. Therefore, it was difficult for them to choose between Han Fei and Chao Qiu. Therefore, in their opinion, a duel between the 2 of them was the best way to resolve the situation. As for Sun Mu, no matter who Sun Mu was, all of them could beat him. Why should they care about him? It was just a symbolic slap. If the 5 of them forcibly intervened, they wouldn't have any face. Waterluster said coldly, make it quick. Fight. Han Fei immediately looked at Sun Mu, only to find that his face had turned green. Sun Mu never expected that things would develop to this state. In his opinion, as long as the seal on Chao Chio was opened, even if they could win, it would be a 3-on-3. And he still had his last trump card. No one knew. At that time, he could easily collect all the luck. His perfect plan was ruined by Han Fei's words. Who wouldn't be angry? Sun Mu gritted his teeth. Han Fei, I'll remember you. Han Fei sneered. Didn't you remember me long ago? By the way, this is not the mist of 9 sounds. So, the array in the mist can't save you. Either you take the initiative to admit defeat and give me your luck, or I'll kill you and take your luck by force. Choose one. Sun Mu's face was trembling, and his eyes became fierce. Do you really think I don't have any trump cards? The fire seed was burning. If you have, take them out. Don't waste time. Sun Mu was furious. He really had a trump card. At this point, all his luck was here. Shouldn't he fight for it? Immediately, Sun Mu made up his mind and shouted, "Fight!" Han Fei stepped into the air and walked towards Sun Mu. Do you know? From the first time you couldn't kill me, it was impossible for you to kill me now. You'd better use your trump card as soon as possible. If you don't, I'm afraid you won't have a chance at all. As he spoke, he extended the void line. Han Fei held Snowmorn in his hand. Buzz! 108 swords appeared in the air, and Sun Mu held the high-grade divine weapon in his hand. For your sister, draw your sword. Between heaven and earth, a white light suddenly appeared. Shocking sword energy descended from the sky, not giving Sun Mu a chance to react at all. It's already the final battle, and you want to light up everywhere with me? Are you playing? The secret method was activated, and Sun Mu's 108 swords merged into one. Hastily, he tried to use the 10,000 swords as one to block the sword. Ding, bang! 10,000 swords returned to origin, exploded in an instant. Sun Mu fell to the ground at a terrifying speed, and the void lines directly hooked him. Sun Mu was bleeding, and the divine battle suit on his body was shattered by Han Fei's sword. At this moment, blood was dripping from his chest to his abdomen. At this juncture, he felt a life-and-death crisis again. Therefore, he had no time to care about his wounds and summoned a fish skin, which turned out to be a death scapegoat. This meant that Han Fei had actually killed Sun Mu with a single slash. However, this guy managed to dodge the void lines. But Han Fei's body flickered in the air. Sacrificing punch. A huge crimson fist fell from the sky, directly locking on Sun Mu, who had just used the death scapegoat. Facing Han Fei's punch, Sun Mu's eyes almost popped out. How can this guy launch 2 attacks of this level? 108 immortal slaying swords. At that moment, the void shook. It was no longer the 10,000 swords as one, but more like a kind of power of law or a special ability of swordsmanship. 108 rays of light, including the sword in Sun Mu's hand, seemed to break through the sky and slash Han Fei. On the side, Chao Chio swallowed frantically. How can I fight him? Han Fei is so fierce. Punishing Saber suddenly said, "This sword strike is interesting, but it's a pity that it's too late." When Sun Mu slashed out this sword strike, he didn't have time to care whether this sword strike could kill Han Fei or not. All the weapons on his body appeared, his essence blood was burning, the amulet jade appeared, and he was ready to use the immortal seal at any time. However, just when he wanted to use the immortal seal, he was shocked to find that it didn't work. This is impossible. How can the immortal seal fail? My soul! The sacrificing punch directly smashed all the obstacles along the way. Semi-divine weapons, amulet jade, all exploded into pieces. Although this punch failed to crush Sun Mu into pieces, it was because Sun Mu's family was strong enough and had a lot of good things. If it were someone else, they would have been smashed into pieces. Rumble. On the ground, a large pit of more than 50 meters in diameter was blasted out by the punch. Sun Mu's body was lying inside in a deformed state, and he was on his deathbed. In the air, Han Fei looked at Sun Mu's sword strike and stuffed a spiritual fruit into his mouth. Sun Mu's sword strike was also a lock-on skill. In that case, Han Fei roared and hit the sword light with a thick stick. Han Fei flipped his hand and pressed the other end of the stick, shouting, "9 Mansions Dragon Seal." Rumble. Together with the stick, Han Fei was poked more than 3,000 meters into the sky. Little Fatty stretched out 3 tentacles to protect Han Fei. And Han Fei, with his chest full of blood, managed to survive the blow. In this blow, the embroidery needle was infused with the law of gravity, the 9 mansions dragon seal, and the natural gravity falling from the sky. It could be said that this was the heaviest blow Han Fei had ever made. It was not that the attack was strong, but the force carried by the embroidery needle was very heavy, far exceeding the power of 10 waves. Even so, Han Fei was still pushed more than 3,000 meters into the sky. It could be seen that this Sun Mu was also a fucking badass. Even with this kind of power, he still hit it. Not far away, Chu Linyuan and Wang Dashui were stunned. Little junior brother is so strong. Chao Tian couldn't help clenching his fists. He didn't expect that Sun Mu's sword strike would be blocked by Han Fei. If it were him, he wouldn't have been able to block it before his spiritual energy and energy were exhausted. As for punishing Saber and the others, they all nodded. Only in this way would he be qualified to take the painting. Below, the guy was defeated the moment he made his move. After a while, Han Fei swayed and fell to the ground with a mouthful of spiritual fruits. The void lines were still hanging on Sun Mu, making him unable to speak. Han Fei sneered. I wanted to tell you when I was in the level 3 fishery. When it comes to fighting, just use your ultimate moves. I told you, but you didn't listen to me. Why did you send red light everywhere? What's the use of that thing? Puff, Han Fei killed Sun Mu with his own hand. The grievances that had accumulated for several years were finally resolved. It was very pleasant. This was not the 9 shadows mist. There were no rules to save him, so Sun Mu was really dead. Chao Chio trembled all over. You want me to fight with such a devil? Do you think I don't want to live? Chao Tian took a breath. Don't worry, you can do it. Chao Chio almost cried. What can I do? If I had known, I wouldn't have come in. How could I fight him? After 2 moves, Sun Mu was killed. How could this be a fight? This was clearly torture. Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on himself one after another and reached out to grab a ball of spirit awakening fluid to drink. Then he smiled and said, Well, since you want a fair fight, can you let me have a moment? Earth 9 nodded. Of course. You need to recover to your peak state. Chu Linyuan and Wang Dashui landed beside Han Fei and frowned. Little junior brother, although your attack just now was strong, it was too risky. Your energy and spiritual energy are all gone. If the other party still has a trump card, it will be bad. Chu Linyuan took out a glowing red fruit and said, Little junior brother, this can help you recover your energy quickly. Han Fei thought to himself, in fact, my spiritual energy has been replenished in the blink of an eye. If necessary, I can still make another slash. However, since Chu Linyuan was so enthusiastic, Han Fei certainly wouldn't refuse. Every time he replenished his energy, his chances of winning would increase by 10%. It would be a waste not to take it. Wang Dashui was a little embarrassed. Han Fei immediately said, Senior brother, I know you are poor. It's okay. You have been confined for so long. I know. Han Fei looked at Chao Tian. What? Why don't you challenge Chao Chio and admit defeat? Chao Tian actually wanted to help Chao Chio defeat Han Fei. However, he didn't have this opportunity. Originally, the 2 sides were evenly matched. At this moment, the 3 from the Thug Academy were present. He didn't have this opportunity. Chao Tian immediately looked at Han Fei. If I admit defeat, my luck will be transferred to me? Han Fei nodded. Wang Dashui said, Little junior brother, I want to challenge you. Han Fei grinned. I accept. Wang Dashui nodded. I admit defeat. The 5 legendary creatures looked at each other. This is a bit childish. In the end, they began to admit defeat. Chao Tian said, Chao Chio, I challenge you. Chao Chio said with a sad face, Can I not accept it? Chao Tian shook his head. Chao Chio said pitifully, Then I accept. Chao Tian nodded. I admit defeat. After a moment, everyone retreated, and Chao Tian looked solemnly at the golden bead in his hand. Once this thing was broken, Chao Chiu might never be the same Chao Chiu again. He held the bead for a long time, his heart full of nostalgia. He hoped that Chao Chiu would still be the same Chao Chiu who only needed to invent things. The responsibility of the family was too heavy for him. However, Chao Chiu was the hope of the Chao family to return to the peak, so he had to do this. Kacha! The sound of the golden bead breaking came. Suddenly, a large number of golden runes appeared on the body of Chao Chiu, who was extremely nervous. The runes formed into numerous bandage-like illusory rings that revolved around his body. A roar! Chao Chiu's hair stood on end, and his body flew into the air uncontrollably. At this moment, his eyes glowed red, the runes on the surface of his body turned from golden to blood red, and a terrifying power burst out layer by layer. The 3 rune bandages were broken, and Chao Tian sighed slightly. This is the limit that Chao Chiu can bear. Chapter 955. Han Fei continued to cast the divine healing technique on himself, and his injuries had basically recovered. Little Fatty wasn't strong enough, and 2 of its tentacles had been broken. He couldn't fight unless he had to. Han Fei made up his mind. It seemed that he couldn't hide the yin-yang divine eyes anymore. Buzz, Chao Chiu's momentum was rising, and his body grew half a head taller in a short time. His fat body also became thinner at this moment. Han Fei was not used to this Chao Chiu. Was this Chao Chiu who was not Little Fatty still Chao Chiu? Clatter! Chao Chiu slowly opened his eyes, and his eyes became strange and fanatical. A kind of fanaticism that Chen Aochen had seen appeared in Chao Chiu's eyes. However, different from Chen Aochen, in addition to fanaticism, there was also a kind of indifference similar to Chao Jiaren's in Chao Chiu's eyes. Chao Chiu looked at Han Fei, paused for a long time, and said leisurely, "I haven't forgotten my previous memories. I don't want to fight this battle. I can't give up. I'll wait for you to fully recover." As he spoke, Chao Chiu stretched out his hand, and a big hand made of spiritual energy grabbed at Sun Mu. He clenched it hard, and Sun Mu's body was immediately crushed. Chao Chiu said lightly, "Sun Mu was killed by me. It has nothing to do with you." After that, Chao Chiu glanced at Chao Tian, who nodded. Although Sun Mu is a bit troublesome, it's not a big problem. Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. Chao Chiu has really changed. Is this bloodline of the god of war so terrifying? Next to Han Fei, Chu Linyuan said via voice transmission, "Very strong. Little junior brother, if you have any trump cards, just show them. Anyway, with the sea-quelling painting, you are already standing on the cusp of the storm. It doesn't matter if your trump cards are exposed. After all, you have the Thug Academy behind you." Wang Dashui nodded. "Little junior brother, beat him." After half an hour, Han Fei recovered to his peak state. After so many battles, he had already digested more than half of the improvement brought by the spirit awakening fluid. His pure strength was also above 8 million kilograms. If he became an advanced hidden fisher, he should be close to the power of a wave. With the help of the secret method of devil change and the invincible fighting intent, even if Chao Chiu had the bloodline of the god of war, what could he do? The 5 legends did not speak at this moment. Judging from the power they showed at the moment, they could even compete with legendary creatures of the same realm. This was an evenly matched battle. Although Han Fei had also used all his strength in the battle against Sun Mu just now, it was a complete one-shot. The difference between their battle realms and awareness was too great. At this moment, Han Fei tapped his feet and appeared in midair. Chao Chiu flew up at the same time and stretched himself. Rationally speaking, I don't like this feeling very much. This bloodline seemed to be able to affect my emotions and will. Over time, perhaps under the influence of the bloodline here, he would become a new war god. But it is very difficult. Han Fei smiled. "You don't look like a ball at all now. Come on. Let me see how terrifying the bloodline of the divine god of battle is." Devil transformation. Han Fei's body glowed with golden light, and his eyes gradually became indifferent. He took out a mint leaf, stuffed it into his mouth, and looked at Chao Chiu. Now that the seal has been unlocked, let's fight with all our strength. Chao Qiu nodded and took off his battle suit. His strong muscles bulged, and in the air, there seemed to be power entering his body. God of War attach. Swish. Swish. The two rushed towards each other in an instant. Golden light and red flames filled half of the sky. The terrifying waves formed a storm, crushing the ground. The rocks collapsed, and the vegetation was damaged. As soon as they came up, the two launched tentative attacks. After dozens of punches, Chao Qiu was blasted into the air for a kilometer. But Han Fei didn't look happy at all. He could feel that Chao Qiu was a little inexperienced. He didn't have enough control over the power of the God of War bloodline. And Han Fei had now become a whetstone. Since it was a battle, the outcome had to be decided. What methods did he have? It was time to use them. The void lines quietly stretched out, and Han Fei's figure shot out. The invincible fist mark crossed the void like a stream of light in the sky. Chao Qiu stomped his foot, creating a sonic boom, and a faint red giant phantom appeared behind him. Boom! At this moment, the void lines instantly buckled at Chao Qiu. Chao Qiu frowned, and the phantom behind him trembled. Han Fei was surprised to find that the void lines couldn't go any further and couldn't hold Chao Qiu's soul at all. The two separated again, and Chao Qiu's eyes were cold. Just now, there seemed to be a strong crisis. You seem to have a way to attack the soul. However, under the will of the Real God of War, my soul is as solid as gold, so this method is ineffective. Han Fei grinned. Then let me see if your energy is infinite first. Boom, 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 10 minutes. 30 minutes. 100 minutes. A mountaintop was directly smashed by the two. From the perspective of the situation, Chao Qiu, who had unlocked the bloodline of the God of War, was still a little weaker than Han Fei in terms of strength. Those mountains were basically smashed by his body. The aftermath of the battle between the two shocked the onlookers. These two people's physiques were too strong. Even Wang Dashui couldn't help but sigh. At least the power Chao Qiu displayed now was as strong as Chao Tian. And Han Fei was panting, stuffing a mouthful of spiritual fruits. Han Fei was dumbfounded. The bloodline of the God of War can constantly absorb energy from the void. What a domineering bloodline. Han Fei frowned. Different from what he thought when he first met Chao Tian, he thought that Chao Tian could continuously exert such powerful attacks because he had stored energy. But Chao Tian didn't have the bloodline of the God of War. He might have just practiced the corresponding spells. Otherwise, if he had endless energy, Wang Dashui would have been defeated long ago. But now it seemed that this was not the case. The bloodline of the God of War could simply absorb energy from the void, which was even more powerful than his. Although the desolate god body could also absorb spiritual energy and energy from the void, it was not so powerful. Even though he had a level 7 spiritual heritage and his absorption speed was far higher than that of ordinary people, it was still not enough in the face of this bloodline of the God of War. Chao Tian clenched his fists at the moment, looking serious. The so-called God of War was invincible. However, there was a gap between Chao Qiu's bloodline and Han Fei's basic strength. If it weren't for the bloodline of the God of War, he wouldn't have been able to hold on for so long. Han Fei's strength was even stronger than the last time they met in the swamp. Fuse. Suddenly, a strange black and white light burst out of Han Fei's eyes. The phantom glass wings flapped, and the agility of wind burst out. Swish. Han Fei left a trail of fire in the void. It was the sparks caused by the friction with the air, dazzling and terrifying because the speed was too fast. God's body, devil fist. Sacrificing punch. Bam! Flames bloomed in the sky, illuminating the night. Even from 1,000 kilometers away, the slight tremor from the void could be felt. The fruit given by Chu Linyuan had been stuffed into Han Fei's mouth, and the energy in Han Fei's body was full again. Snowmorn was drawn, and a white light flashed across the sky, seeming to cut something, making a scratching sound. When Han Fei took a closer look, he saw a giant 100 meters tall, fighting with his hands and shoulders. However, because the power of this sword was too strong, the light on the giant became dimmer and dimmer. Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. At this moment, Han Fei himself became a Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram, which was only more than 20 meters in size. It slashed at the war god Phantom and blocked the sword drawing technique at the same time. And Chao Qiu, his body behind the giant, pressed his hands in the void, burning his blood to resist. Energy gathered crazily in the void. However, how much energy could be collected to block such a powerful attack in an instant? Therefore, the giant was being worn out bit by bit, transforming into nothingness. Chu Linyuan was still exclaiming, "Every attack is comparable to Sun Mu's last sword strike. Isn't this consumption a little too terrifying?" Wang Dashui said firmly, "Little junior brother can win." Chao Tian said lightly, "The bloodline of the war god has just been awakened. If he has a little more time, Han Fei won't be a match for him." Punishing Saber suddenly smiled. "Not necessarily. Although that little fatty doesn't seem to have any secret treasures, the seal on him is comparable to a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. Moreover, the bracelet on his hand is the real source of this war god Phantom. Even if it is not a sea-quelling bizarre treasure, it is at least an ultra-quality divine weapon. This means that the little fatty is now also using at least 2 ultra-quality divine weapons. In the case that neither side can exert the strongest state of their weapons, there is no difference between an ultra-quality divine weapon and a sea-quelling bizarre treasure. So, for now, it seems that the little fatty can only take a beating." Waterluster said coldly, "If the little fatty wants to fully adapt to this power, I'm afraid it will take more than 3 years. You should have unlocked his seal 3 years earlier." Chao Tian shook his head. "If I had unlocked it earlier, there wouldn't have been 3 layers of seals. It would have been meaningless to unlock 2 layers at most." Chu Linyuan said, Being able to absorb energy from the void crazily, this is the trump card of the war god bloodline, right? If it doesn't have this heaven-defying ability, this bloodline is worthless." Although Chu Linyuan said so, he still sighed with emotion in his heart. The heritage of the big clans is really strong. This kind of power alone is enough for Chao Qiu to sweep away all his enemies. Whether it was himself, Dashui, or even Chao Tian himself, they were no match for Chao Qiu. The premise was that Chao Qiu had fully mastered this power. But now, Chao Qiu was just taking a beating. Bam! The giant phantom exploded, and the sword-drawing technique was also collapsing. The supreme yin-yang wheel was still spinning, turning directly towards Chao Qiu. The latter's face was pale, and he couldn't replenish his energy. If Han Fei's attack wasn't so fierce, as long as the battle dragged on, Han Fei would definitely lose. But Han Fei obviously wanted to win the battle quickly, so he had to burn his blood. At this moment, a pair of giant hands that seemed to stretch out from ancient times blocked in front of him, trying to tear the Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram apart. However, this was not just the Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram transformed by Little Black and Little White. There was also Han Fei inside. Buzz, 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 the pair of big hands cracked inch by inch. Earth 9 suddenly said, "There is a Taoist aura in that black and white round light. The little fatty can't hold it anymore." Chao Tian frowned. "Taoist aura? What's Han Fei's strength? How could it have anything to do with Taoist aura?" The tree spirit also said, "Even without Han Fei, those hands shouldn't be able to tear the black and white diagram apart. However, they can repel it with terrifying power." Crack, crack, crack. The giant hands were full of cracks and were shattering inch by inch. Chao Qiu was dripping with blood, bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his muscles were bursting. If it weren't for the crazy gathering of energy in the void, he might have been directly cut by the supreme yin-yang wheel at this moment. Chao Tian's eyelids were twitching, which was rare. Admit defeat. However, Chao Qiu was unmoved. Instead, he shouted in a low voice, "The will of the god of war never admits defeat. Fight to the end." Chao Tian's heart trembled. Yes, the current Chao Qiu was not the Chao Qiu of the past. Immediately, Chao Tian looked at the 5 legendary creatures. "Please help us. We admit defeat." However, none of the 5 legendary creatures took action. Earth 9 said indifferently, "In the battle of Providence, either he admits defeat or he dies. No one else can intervene." Chapter 956. Bam. Chao Tian tried to attack the Tai Chi yin-yang painting. However, Wang Dashui's big green gate shook and blocked this blow. Wang Dashui grinned. You broke the seal and fought for the sea-quelling painting. You have no right to intervene in this battle. Huh. Chao Tian completely broke out, and an attack comparable to the sacrificing punch roared out. However, at this time, a golden black mountain blocked in front of him. Earth 9 waved its tail and the terrifying fist mark collapsed. Earth 9 said lightly, "You chose the road yourself. I won't interfere." Chao Tian's eyes were red and he roared, "Chao Chiu, admit defeat. Han Fei, stop." But Han Fei couldn't hear what Chao Tian was saying at all. After fusing with Little Black, he couldn't have fully controlled it without the support of the peppermint leaves. At this moment, he had no choice but to win. How could he stop? Han Fei didn't have a second thought. How could he stop? Bam! The big hand exploded, and a bracelet floated in the air. Clang, the lingering sound was earth-shattering. At this time, infinity water rushed out. Explode! Rumble! Like a nuclear explosion, smoke and dust rose thousands of meters into the sky. Around the mountain, there were cracks and gullies. The scene was very huge. Chao Chiu was bombarded to the ground at a terrifying speed. Smoke billowed and the earth rumbled. Chao Tian rushed over crazily. And in the sky, Han Fei disappeared as if he had never been here. After a while, Chao Tian picked up the dying Chao Chiu from the ruins and said softly, "Don't worry, I won't let you fight anyone you can't defeat in the future. No one can stop me." There was a gap on the bracelet, which Chao Tian grabbed in his hand. He was stuffing the holy medicine into Chao Chiu's mouth. As long as Chao Chiu was still alive, he could come back to life. This was the only reason why Chao Tian didn't go crazy. Chao Tian looked at the sky and murmured, "Han Fei has an unknown trump card on the floating island." After Han Fei appeared, he passed out directly. Seeing this scene, Jiang Chao and Yang Xie were both shocked, and Yu Shire looked solemn. Ren Tianfei frowned slightly. Did he encounter a strong enemy this time? He was actually injured to this extent. The energy in Han Fei's body was exhausted, but his spiritual energy was recovering at a terrifying speed. Little junior brother, Jiang Chao said solemnly, "Don't panic. Han Fei is still breathing." At this moment, Han Fei was also dripping with blood. Chao Chiu seemed to have been defending, but under the impact of the energy, how could he escape unscathed? Ren Tianfei said, "Don't worry. His energy is exhausted. He must be too tired. Find a spirit gatherer. His body is recovering on its own, very fast. This is above level 7. Ren Tianfei said, "There's no need to look for it. When he had recovered a little, he would wake up himself. He's a spirit gatherer himself, better than others." Han Fei woke up at dawn because he could feel the warmth of the sun. Opening his eyes, Han Fei saw Jiang Chao, Yang Xie, Yu Shire, and the others looking at him with concern. Jiang Chao asked in delight, "Han Fei, what do you think?" Yang Xie asked, "Junior brother, who did this to you?" Yu Shire asked, "The other party is stronger than me." Chao Tian? Ren Tianfei said, "I'm not curious about this. What I'm curious about is that you can not only recover your injuries on your own, but also recover your spiritual energy and energy quickly. Your 5 internal organs were damaged, but after a sleep, you recovered 50% of them?" Han Fei moved his finger and found that it hurt a little, so he immediately cast the divine healing technique on himself. After a while, Han Fei sighed. "Who can tell me what the bloodline of the god of war is?" Ren Tianfei's face changed drastically. "What did you say? The bloodline of the god of war?" Jiang Chao's face also changed drastically, but not so fast. Seeing Ren Tianfei's face, he guessed something. He had only heard of the bloodline of the god of war, but Ren Tianfei should know something about it. Ren Tianfei said, "I don't have the memory about the bloodline of the god of war, but it's very interesting. Ask me yourself when you see me in the future." Han Fei thought, "What are you talking about? You're right in front of me. You should at least say that I saw your real body, right?" Jiang Chao said, "In the ancient records of the Thousand-Star City, It is said that there was a god of war who conquered the sea. It is said that that person was at least a sea expansion realm king. He was almost as powerful as the first president of our Thug Academy. Cough cough, Han Fei rolled his eyes. Since when did the first-generation president of the Thug Academy become so awesome? Didn't they say that he was poisoned to death in a fight with a strong master? He was buried in the pit at the back of the mountain and couldn't even get in. Ren Tianfei sneered and said, "You're back. It seems that you won." Han Fei nodded slightly. "I won." Yang Xie and Jiang Chao were very surprised. He had even used the bloodline of the god of war, but he still won? This disciple's strength was unfathomable. Han Fei looked at Ren Tianfei. "Old man Ren, you can't take advantage of me." Ren Tianfei glanced at Han Fei disdainfully and sneered. "I admit defeat. Do you really think Master is going to beat his disciple?" Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that Old man Ren admitted defeat. Otherwise, it wouldn't be easy to beat him. Although he didn't know if it was transformed by a drop of essence blood, or did it borrow someone else's corpse to live for a short time. Anyway, it wouldn't be easy to beat him. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. "I'm afraid that the number one heavenly talent in the Thousand-Star City will be Chao Qiu in the future." Thinking of Chao Qiu's weird bloodline that could infinitely absorb energy, Han Fei couldn't help but be a little shocked. Chao Qiu's hack seemed to be even more awesome than his own. He had stored them for a long time. Whether it was spiritual energy or energy fruits, they were all collected bit by bit. But Chao Qiu could directly absorb them from the void, endless. In the evening, Han Fei made another meal. After stuffing himself with food, he finally recovered to his peak. Han Fei couldn't help but marvel at the benefits of a level 7 spiritual heritage. Even his injuries were recovering faster than others. How strong would it be if it became a level 8 or even a level 9 spiritual heritage in the future? However, Han Fei was puzzled. It seemed that it was a bit difficult to become a level 9 spiritual heritage. After all, he didn't know where to get the next few levels of the true spirit fishing art. In any case, he had to find a way to get the 7th floor of the Zhang family first. As for where the 8th floor was? I'll cultivate to the 7th level first. When that time comes, my strength should be able to go up another level. In the evening, night fell again. It was the 4th night. This time, Han Fei did not hesitate to find the place where the color-changing star was. Although the star still couldn't show up, Han Fei was sure that it was here. There should be only one way to get it, that was, to fish the star out of the water. However, when he was about to fish it out, he seemed to think of something and came to Ren Tianfei. "Old Ren, why are you here? Did you know I would come?" Ren Tianfei shook his head. "No." "Then why are you here?" Ren Tianfei smiled. "Go find your opportunity. Don't worry about me." Seeing that Ren Tianfei didn't want to answer him at all, Han Fei was puzzled. The sea token was distributed by Ren Tianfei, and Ren Tianfei also found that star. For him, this was actually more like an experience, a very difficult experience. Logically speaking, since the star had been found, Ren Tianfei should have taken the opportunity. Why didn't he? There must be some secrets that Han Fei didn't know. Forget it. I'll ask old Han later. Now that I got the map, he wouldn't keep quiet, would he? On the lake, Han Fei reached out and fished. Swish. The scenery in front of Han Fei changed. It seemed to be still the surface of the water, but there was something strange about the water. Han Fei stepped on it as if he were stepping on a mirror, but ripples spread out. When Han Fei looked up, the sky was full of stars, and he seemed to be in the vast universe. And not far away, a red spot was flickering slightly. Hiss, could this be that star? It was like he was in the depths of the universe in the vast sea of stars. But Han Fei knew this was impossible. He couldn't breathe in that kind of place, could he? However, those stars really looked like small dots hanging on a piece of black cloth, and Han Fei seemed to be able to pick them up easily. In this world full of nothingness, Han Fei walked forward dozens of steps and came to 3 meters away from the red star. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes. A drop of blood? Han Fei couldn't help taking a deep breath. A drop of blood as big as a star. What kind of blood is this? Is this an opportunity? Suddenly, Han Fei looked back through this drop of blood. Han Fei found that a familiar position of stars appeared in the black void not far away or close. It was one of the 36 star position maps that Han Fei found. It was flickering at the moment, but it was not conspicuous. Han Fei quickly looked around, only to feel dizzy for a moment. 35 of the 36 star position maps had appeared. Was there still one missing? Han Fei immediately looked at this drop of blood, and his heart trembled. Could it be? The last star position map is here, in the void where I am? Han Fei swallowed and stretched out his finger to the drop of blood. Just when he was about to touch it, there was a ripple in the void, and a shadow appeared. It looked like a human silhouette, and it was a woman's silhouette, as if it was covered by a black veil. So, he could only see a figure. Han Fei frowned, withdrew his hand, and faced the shadow very close. Alas, in the void there was a woman's sigh, which seemed a little sad and emotional. Han Fei didn't understand what it meant. Chapter 957. The sigh of a woman appeared in the void. No matter how one looked at it, it was extremely strange. Han Fei cupped his hands and said, "Senior." In the shadow, a pair of blurry eyes seemed to be staring at Han Fei. It wasn't until Han Fei felt a little creepy that the shadow said, "What's going to come will come. Do you know what it means for you to take this opportunity now?" Han Fei shook his head. "I don't know." The shadow said leisurely, "This world is very big. There is a sea in the sea and a sky beyond the sky. Countless years ago, the sea race rose, and the vast land was covered by the sea. Some people ran away and some people stuck to it, but in the end, the human race declined and the population withered." Han Fei said, "I've heard of it, but now there are strong masters building floating islands, and human beings can breathe and develop, and strong masters are still being born. The strength of human beings is gradually recovering." The shadow said, "Do you mean the Thousand-Star City?" Han Fei's face changed slightly. "Senior, do you know about it?" The shadow said lightly, "I moved the Thousand-Star City here. Why don't I know?" Han Fei was dumbfounded. The Thousand-Star City was moved here by this guy? Damn, she's ridiculously strong, isn't she? It's not a big deal that she can move mountains. Han Fei felt that when one reached Shueishenqi's level, they could move mountains. But could Shueishenqi move the scattered stars island? Obviously, that was impossible. That wasn't something that could be done by humans at all. But now, the person in front of him said that the Thousand-Star City was moved here by her. This person was even a woman, which made Han Fei's heart surge, and it was hard for him to calm down. The shadow said, "Human beings fought with sea demons for more than 9,000 years and finally conquered a large territory. Because the territory was very large, many human experts divided the territory and ruled it, forming the 36 mysterious heavens." Han Fei asked, 36 mysterious heavens? The shadow smiled faintly. It can also be called the 36 palaces, or the 36 immortal palaces. Where the Thousand-Star City is located, it is called the 9th immortal palace, called the Yin-Yang Heaven. At that time, the immortal palace was just an immortal palace. Later, the masters used the floating stones as the foundation, captured the sea mountain, and set up a floating array. That's how the Thousand-Star City came to be today. Han Fei immediately swallowed. The prehistoric secrets were too fucking shocking. In other words, the entire territory he was currently in was within the boundaries of the 9th immortal palace. There were as many as 35 such immortal palaces. Even if these 36 immortal palaces were added together, it was still just a piece of the foundation that the humans had defended back then. Most of the ancient experts had already run off to God knows where. Han Fei wanted to count with his fingers. Just how vast was the territory of the 9th immortal palace? A level 3 fishery is already 1,000,000 kilometers long, isn't it? The unknown place? With a casual calculation, it would be millions of miles long. Besides, the fishery was separate from the unknown place. Han Fei's head was in a mess. It was so big. Han Fei instinctively explained with his own knowledge. The distance between the Earth and the Moon was 386,000 kilometers, which was only slightly more than 700,000 kilometers. How big was the territory of the ninth immortal palace? The shadow seemed to know what Han Fei was thinking and said lightly, "The ninth immortal palace has a territory of 8 million kilometers long." Han Fei almost rolled his eyes. Just the ninth immortal palace alone was 8 million kilometers long. Then suppose the 36 immortal palaces were connected. It would take him 8 minutes to run at the speed of light. What could he do? Han Fei immediately asked, "Are the 36 immortal palaces out of the infinite ocean?" The shadow said lightly, "The infinite ocean that is generally known is actually in the same area as the 36 immortal palaces. In the beginning, the 36 immortal palaces were all on the other side of the infinite ocean. However, although the immortal palaces were there, the war did not stop. Later, some secrets happened, and some immortal palaces declined. In order to protect the safety of the people, the palace masters moved the immortal palaces away. They had to be moved to a relatively barren place so that humans could live in peace. Of course, moving the immortal palaces is also dangerous. It's a secret, so I won't tell you more." Han Fei thought to himself, "I haven't said much. I've already said enough." He couldn't help but wonder, how strong must a person be to move the immortal palaces? And such a strong person could also die? Han Fei said, "So, the ninth immortal palace was moved to the barren land?" The shadow said lightly, "Not only the ninth immortal palace. In secret, more than 1 or 2 immortal palaces have been moved away. The Waterwood Heaven is adjacent to the Yin-Yang Heaven, and the situation is similar." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "There's another one next to mine?" Han Fei immediately asked, "Senior, will there be wars between the 36 immortal palaces?" The shadow said, "Occasionally, but not often." Han Fei took a breath and said, "Senior, then what does this opportunity you mentioned represent?" Looking at this drop of blood, Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. This matter has already reached the immortal palace. However, I haven't even been to the Thousand-Star City. I'm just a country bumpkin who doesn't understand the beauty of a big city. The shadow was silent for a while and slowly said, "You only need to know that there are 2 drops of this thing. If you get both drops, you will become the new palace master of the Yin-Yang Heaven." Han Fei's face changed. Palace master of the Yin-Yang Heaven? Why does this name sound so weird? The ninth palace master is better. Why is it always the palace master? Isn't it the immortal palace? Isn't it better to call it the immortal master? Yes, the ninth immortal master. This name doesn't sound bad. Han Fei immediately asked, "Then where is the second drop?" The shadow sighed again. "In the geocentric foundation of the immortal palace." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "I don't even know where the immortal palace is. Or is the immortal palace above the Thousand-Star City? Old Manrin might know about this. He could just ask Old Manrin then. If not, the Thug Academy might also know. Besides, there was Old Han. It wasn't difficult for him to know this. However, it was already so difficult to get one drop. The second drop was still in the geocentric foundation of the immortal palace. Would it be difficult to get it? Han Fei asked awkwardly, "Is this dangerous?" The shadow suddenly asked, "Do you know the steps into the sea?" Han Fei nodded quickly. "I know this too well. I got the art of invincibility in that corner, and I almost released some monsters. Fortunately, I didn't continue to dig, or I would have been in trouble." The shadow said lightly, "The steps into the sea has 4 purposes. One is to exchange materials with the steps into the sea of other immortal palaces. The second is to use the power collected by the steps into the sea to maintain the array of the immortal palace. The third is to pray to heaven on the altar, where there may be a very low probability of trading with a supreme being. The fourth is to raise a clam, where corpse puppets are sealed below. Every 100 years, they are harvested, brought back to the immortal palace, seized its will, and asked to guard the immortal palace." Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. "Fortunately, heaven didn't trade with you. Otherwise, My demon purification pot would have no vines. However, this information was simply super secret. The so-called sacrifice was to exchange things with the steps into the sea under the jurisdiction of other sects? No wonder they always brought back some garbage. So, this was actually an exchange between 2 or more people in the steps into the sea. In the end, it was just exchanging garbage for garbage. In the end, everyone took the garbage anyway. Occasionally, if they exchanged for something good, they would treasure it, but in fact, it was garbage that others didn't want. As for the spiritual chi used to stabilize the immortal palace, he had no idea how it was done. It's just that I seem to have made some trouble with the steps into the sea. It seems that there is a problem with the ability to exchange things. I wonder if it has recovered now. Han Fei quickly said, "Senior, if something goes wrong with the steps into the sea and we can't exchange offerings for anything, will the divine palace not be maintained? Will it fall off?" Han Fei felt a little guilty. If an immortal palace were to fall into the sea, wouldn't he be blamed for it? Moreover, it was his own fault. If he became the 9th immortal master. In the end, when he got home, his house had fallen into the sea. Wasn't he digging his own grave? The shadow shook his head slightly. I won't. The immortal palace had its own array formation, so it would not fall because of this. However, this will cause the spiritual chi in the immortal palace to be thinner. Han Fei was relieved to hear that. As long as it didn't fall, he wouldn't be able to move it. If the heavenly palace was right above the 1,000-star city and it really fell, it might smash the 1,000-star city together with it. Then he, who was half the 9th immortal master, would be alone. Han Fei immediately thought, the puppets suppressed by the steps into the sea have to be collected once every 100 years. How long has it been since they were collected? Han Fei couldn't help but look at the shadow. What will happen if I don't collect the puppets? The shadow was silent for a while. They will become fiercer and finally become a peerless, ferocious monster. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Don't. I'm taking over the immortal palace. Do I have to take over a ferocious monster? The shadow said, what you should care about is not this puppet, but that there are many puppets above the immortal palace. And in the underground foundation of the immortal palace, there are even strong puppets. If I'm not mistaken, they are at least at the explorer level. Han Fei didn't know what to say. At the explorer level? And you want me to get another drop of blood? I'm not bragging, but they can take my head off and kick it like a ball. I might as well stay here and grab the sea-quelling painting instead of going to the explorers. The shadow glanced at Han Fei. You are too weak, so you can't go in a short time. This half drop of source water is also good for you. But because it is incomplete, the benefits are limited. Mastering this drop of source water means mastering the sea-quelling painting. Han Fei asked in surprise, isn't this blood? The shadow didn't answer but sighed. In the future, once you become the new immortal palace master, you will need to bear a lot of things. You will know the specifics when the time comes. Han Fei asked, why me? Back then, someone could get the sea-quelling painting, right? Han Fei felt that the shadow seemed to be looking at him deeply, but it didn't speak, which made Han Fei feel a little creeped out. The shadow began to fade. Han Fei hurriedly said, Senior, are you still alive? How can I take charge of the immortal palace with this token? In Han Fei's cry, the shadow disappeared. In this nothingness, only Han Fei was left. Chapter 958. The shadow left a huge secret to Han Fei, and ran away. Han Fei didn't know if it had already died or something. Han Fei felt that he might not be able to resist it. Even the weakest puppet is an explorer? Are you kidding me? However, this time, Han Fei seemed to be dumbfounded. A barren land? He didn't know how barren this place was until now. The immortal palace was destroyed for some reason and moved to this place. Even the palace master was gone. How could things develop to such a state? His vision was really limited by his imagination. If the palace master was still alive, could Ren Tianfei steal the sea-quelling painting from the immortal palace? Han Fei didn't think too much about it. Anyway, the half drop of source water was here. Although he didn't know what it was? Anyway, it was very advanced. If he took another half drop, he could become an immortal master. This was not advanced, what was? Han Fei suppressed the excitement in his heart, slowly stretched out his finger, and pointed at the half drop of source water. At the moment when Han Fei's fingertips touched the drop of source water, it instantly sank into Han Fei's body and disappeared. Oh no, my physique is getting stronger and my strength is growing. Han Fei felt that his body was swelling, which scared him so much that he hurriedly cultivated the desolate god body. Twice. 3 times. The speed of cultivation of the desolate god body was beyond Han Fei's imagination. At this speed, he cultivated for half an hour. Even so, he still felt that he couldn't keep up with the speed of his body's expansion. After cultivating for more than 300 times, Han Fei was numb. Han Fei suddenly discovered that his desolate god body had reached the ultimate level and he couldn't cultivate anymore. However, Han Fei's body was still swelling as if there was infinite energy accumulating. This is limited to me? Limited? Is it really so limited? My body is about to explode. Han Fei didn't dare to neglect and directly began to cultivate the indestructible body. Otherwise, he felt that he might explode alive. After a long time, Han Fei only felt that his flesh, blood, tendons, and bones were transforming again and again. He even felt that his bones were changing toward the color of golden jade. In this nothingness, it was difficult to have the concept of time. Anyway, Han Fei didn't know how many changes he had experienced. Bang! Something seemed to explode in Han Fei's body, and a large amount of impurities spurted out from every corner of his body. At that time, Han Fei felt that his body was heavy. Not only was his body heavy, but his mind was also a little heavy. Han Fei lay down in the void, and the God-scaring painting automatically appeared in his mind. It was 88 yuan, 89 yuan, $99, 100 yuan. Gotcha. When the God-scaring painting reached 100 pieces, something seemed to explode in his mind. Then, the God-scaring painting continued to be opened. 101, 108, 156, 199. It was not until the 200th piece of the God-scaring painting was revealed that the dizziness in his mind disappeared. Then, Han Fei passed out completely and didn't know anything. Han Fei's last thought was, if this is what you call useful, please give me more. Han Fei didn't know how long he had been asleep. After all, when he woke up, he was still in the void. However, when he first looked at his own information, he was stunned and dumbfounded. Onert Han Fei level, 57, intermediate hidden fissure, spiritual energy, 4325681399999, spiritual power, 9999/9999 perception range, 500 km strength, 3 million kilograms per wave. First spiritual heritage, level 7, low quality. Second spiritual heritage, unawakened. First spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 49. Second spiritual beast, unawakened. Main art, divine manipulation technique, level 5 of void fishing, heaven level, divine quality, gulp. Han Fei swallowed several times. Except for the upper limit of spiritual energy, he only upgraded from an intermediate hidden fissure to an advanced hidden fissure. Han Fei found that the upper limit of spiritual energy had increased by 3,000 points. As for his spiritual power, with a swish, it seemed to have reached a certain bottleneck. It was full. His range of perception was no longer calculated in meters, but in miles. His strength soared by 5 million kilograms. That was not all. Who knew where the second spiritual vein came from? But what did it mean by unawakened? Wasn't that enough? How could there be a second spiritual beast? Besides, it was also unawakened. Han Fei was so shocked that he couldn't speak for a long time. What kind of treasure was this origin water? His heaven-defying ability made one's hair stand on end. A mere half a drop was already heaven-defying. What would happen if it was a whole drop? Han Fei closed his eyes and looked inside himself. His blood was surging, his meridians were like jade, and his bones were half gold. It seemed that he had broken the third level of the indestructible body art. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. If Ren Tianfei knew that he had broken the third level of the indestructible body art now, what would he do? His eyes would pop out, wouldn't they? The improvement this time was really beyond Han Fei's imagination. It took Han Fei a long time to come back to himself. Han Fei found that if he fought with his current strength, it seemed that Sun Mu could kill him with one punch. No matter how strong Cao Qiu was, he shouldn't be able to resist 10 punches. I seem to be really invincible. Han Fei didn't know how to describe his feelings now. Han Fei only knew that this time, it was worth it to grab the sea-quelling painting. No wonder everyone wanted to grab the sea-quelling painting like crazy. No wonder so many big shots were standing guard and playing chess. No wonder the Thug Academy declined because of this. This was indeed an opportunity to become a king. If he had such talent, as long as he didn't die, who could stop him from becoming a king? However, Han Fei found that his spiritual power seemed to be too strong. It was full of 9,999 points. He was stuck. But, logically speaking, this was too much more than before. Even if it doubled, it shouldn't be like this, right? Suddenly, Han Fei felt that a picture appeared in his mind. Han Fei scanned it with his mind, and the mountains, rivers, and earth appeared in his mind. A world in the picture? Han Fei was surprised. It was indeed a world in the picture. He seemed to be able to connect the entire sea-quelling painting. With a thought, Han Fei could see Jiang Chao and Yang Xie looking up at the lake, Yu Shire squatting by the lake and looking into the water, and Ren Tianfei sitting on the grass calmly. However, he scanned the entire sea-quelling painting. Han Fei found that except for those on the floating island, everyone had disappeared. Has 7 days passed? Han Fei's heart sank. How long has it been? He had practiced the desolate divine body hundreds of times. Maybe 7 days had passed. On the floating island, by the lake, Yang Xie had been looking at the center of the lake. Master, do you think little junior brother can succeed? Jiang Chao sighed. I think so. After all, Han Fei is a heavenly talent who has embarked on the road of invincibility. This is the first heavenly talent in the history of the Thug Academy. As long as he doesn't die, the glory of the past is likely to reappear. Yu Shire sniffed. Invincible? I'm so envious. Ren Tianfei sneered. What do you know? His heart is invincible, and he condenses the road of invincibility with the power of his will. Although he can become much stronger, he is not really invincible. In this world, there is no real invincibility, only different roads. Jiang Chao smiled and said, Senior, Han Fei is also half a disciple of yours. Such a disciple is rare, isn't it? Ren Tianfei snorted and said, I gave him the opportunity. Otherwise, if I had taken it all for myself back then, how would this have happened today? Suddenly, a figure appeared directly beside Ren Tianfei and said with a faint smile, I'm afraid it's not that simple, is it? Han Fei, little junior brother? Hum. More than 300 figures rushed over with a swish. They were the first-generation powerhouses of the village. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Han Fei. Some were trembling slightly, some had eager eyes, and some swallowed nervously, but no one spoke. Sensing that their elders were gone, countless people in the village were running here, wishing they could grow wings and fly over. Han Fei asked, Senior uncle, how long have I been gone? Jiang Chao said with joy, 2 days and 3 hours. Han Fei looked at Jiang Chao in surprise. He had even been prepared to stay in the void for a few months, but it had only been 2 days? That was not right. If it was only 2 days, why were the others in the sea-quelling painting gone? Ren Tianfei said, Are you surprised? It means that the place you went, the time flow is different. Among everyone, only Yang Xie asked tremblingly, Little junior brother, did you take the painting? This was also a question that everyone was concerned about. Han Fei could hear countless people's rapid breathing and rapid heartbeats. Han Fei raised his head slightly. Open. There seemed to be no change, but all of a sudden, A large amount of spiritual energy and energy flooded the floating island. Someone cried with joy. "Ha! It's open! The seal is unlocked." Someone knelt on the ground. "This painting finally has an owner. There's no need to fight for it anymore." Jiang Chao immediately laughed. "Ha! Good, Han Fei, good job. I'm sure you are the best student in the history of the Thug Academy." Yang Xie said excitedly, "Little Qin, I'm out. I'll be out soon." Yushire was still squatting on the ground, looking at Han Fei. "I envy you so much." A large group of children were infected by this atmosphere. They couldn't feel the joy of the adults, but the atmosphere was contagious. At this moment, they were also playing with each other. Among everyone, only Ren Tianfei seemed to have expected this. He looked indifferent, sitting on the ground, motionless. Han Fei was the first to find that something was wrong. Han Fei found that Ren Tianfei had become a corpse again. His face was haggard, and his energy seemed to have dissipated. He had become a statue again. Han Fei's expression was complicated. Oldman Ren didn't seem to help him this time. Did he just watch him take the painting? However, Han Fei felt that Ren Tianfei seemed to be a kind of guarantee, following him to the floating island. It could be seen that his goal was never others, but himself. He was watching him take control of the sea-quelling painting. Han Fei even guessed that when necessary he would take action. For example, if he was really no match for Cao Qiu, maybe Ren Tianfei would take action. However, Han Fei wasn't sure. But he couldn't explain it. When he came, he was just a skeleton. When he left, he was just a skeleton. It was as if his clone had never appeared in the first place. Chapter 959. Han Fei could sense everything in the sea-quelling painting. All living beings were in his mind. Han Fei vaguely guessed that the reason why his spiritual power increased abnormally after harvesting this half-drop of origin water was to control the sea-quelling painting. With a thought, Han Fei tried to disperse the mist of 9 sounds. "Master, Master, congratulations to Master for taking control of this world." Several voices were imprinted in Han Fei's mind, from Earth 9 and the others. Han Fei swallowed. Gosh, the sea-quelling painting has really become his. I don't need to drip blood on it? Instead of letting them come to the floating island, Han Fei asked, "How do I get out of here?" Earth 9 calmly said, "Master, you only need to think about leaving." Han Fei glanced at the people who were looking at him nervously and immediately replied to Earth 9 and the rest, "Let's talk after I leave." Han Fei restored the 9 shadows mist. Now that he could go out, he had to be wary of some people. However, these people had been living in the map for a long time, and they were already carrying on their family line. No matter what, those ordinary people were innocent. As for the others, they could not be released for the time being. He didn't even know what the outside world was like. When they entered the dungeon, there were many creatures waiting for them. Once they were released now, some of them would definitely be robbed and killed once they left the underground city. In that case, they would probably die a wrongful death. If he didn't release them now, some of them might become his hostages. Although old Jiang was watching from the outside, Li Tianlan didn't know what to do. However, having an extra layer of protection was always good. Seeing that more and more people gathered around, Han Fei said to everyone, "I've taken the sea-quelling painting. However, most of you should know where the sea-quelling painting is. I believe you know how dangerous this place is. Therefore, please wait for a few more days. Wait until I leave the boneyard, then I'll let you guys out." Someone's heart sank. They were wondering if Han Fei would really let them go. After all, Han Fei was from the Thug Academy. In terms of position, they had always been enemies, not friends. Someone said in a trembling voice, "Han Fei, if you let us out, at least none of us here will be enemies with the Thug Academy in the future." Thus, Han Fei, after all these years, we are no longer as hot-blooded and impulsive as we used to be. Besides, I'm quite familiar with old Jiang and the others, so I won't go back on my word. The ordinary people could only watch, not daring to speak. However, the anticipation in his eyes was overflowing. Jiang Chao said, "Han Fei, take Yang Xie out first. I'll stay here to calm everyone down. It's better to let these people go after all. Han Fei looked at Jiang Chao and nodded. Okay. Yang Xie could not hold back his excitement. However, seeing that Jiang Chao wasn't going to leave immediately, he said, Master, actually, it doesn't matter if we leave first. Jiang Chao smiled. There's no rush. He had stayed here for so many years, so how could he miss a few more days? You, on the other hand, go out and see how Qin is doing. Yu Shire said, I'll go out too. I'm not from here. Han Fei nodded and then looked at everyone. Don't worry. I've promised to let you go, so I will. However, that will have to wait until I get out of here first. At this moment, all of your clans have sent people to the outer sea region. When the time comes, I hope you know what to do. Everyone nodded. Even those who had tried to stop Han Fei before heaved a long sigh and nodded in agreement. How fierce was the competition for the sea-quelling painting? How could they not know? Many clans and the 7 major sects in the Thousand-Star City must have been dispatched. However, it was Han Fei who got the sea-quelling painting, a member of the Thug Academy. According to those big shots, they would not let him go easily. And then it would be time for them to show their stance. The big clans and sects wouldn't let their former heavenly talents be imprisoned in the painting forever. Someone said, Han Fei, we will try our best, but we can't guarantee anything. However, when the time comes, even if something unexpected happens, please let these children leave first. They are all ordinary people and have no cultivation. Someone responded, yes. We can stay, but please let them leave. As if sensing something, many ordinary people said to their ancestors, Great-grandfather, I'll go with you. Shut up. The man shouted angrily, this is not something you can meddle in. All of you, shut up. Don't talk. A child tugged at the corner of a strong master's clothes. Great-grandma, I want to go with you. The strong master sighed. Listen to me. Yes, I will. Great-grandma will go with you. The teachers of our Jade Fairy Palace are very nice. For a time, it was time for a show of warmth and affection. Han Fei glanced at Yang Xie and Yu Shire. Senior brother, will you go with me first? Yang Xie nodded. But Han Fei communicated with Earth 9 and the others. Can you leave the sea-quelling painting? Han Fei thought that these 5 people were all peak-level law enforcers. Besides, they were all legends. Their strength might even be comparable to that of an explorer. With the help of the 5 of them, Han Fei would have 5 super trump cards. Earth 9 said, Master, we have long been integrated with this world. With your current strength, you can only let one of us leave at most. Besides, the time we can leave is limited. Han Fei's heart sank. Is there such a restriction? Is it because I'm too weak? Waterluster said, Master, Earth 9 said that we can leave with all our strength and descend to the outside world with our real bodies. But if we only descend in the form of clones, we can stay outside for a long time. Han Fei's eyes lit up. How strong are your clones? Waterluster said coldly, less than 10%, probably the strength of a new law enforcer. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. A clone comparable to a law enforcer? This was already very strong. Of course, it might not be enough for those in the outside world. But it didn't matter, at least he could temporarily send a person to the outside world. The tree spirit said, Master, although we can't completely descend into the outside world for now, you can take people in. As long as it's not an explorer, the 5 of us can deal with it. The tree spirit added, the reason why they are not explorers is because explorers do not die easily. Although we can suppress it, the world within the painting will definitely be damaged in battle. The Pyro Company smiled and said, if it's only 4 or 5 enforcers, we can deal with them easily. However, if there were too many of them, it would also cause the world in the painting to collapse. After all, although we are legendary, we can't destroy the enemy in an instant. When one reached the law enforcer realm, they grasped the laws and had many means. Of course, I'm talking about the pinnacle of law enforcement. As for those below the pinnacle, you can do whatever you want. Punishing Saber suddenly said, Master, you can throw a single peak-level law enforcer to me. I'm in charge of killing, and those who are not heavenly talents are like floating clouds to me. Han Fei listened to Punishing Saber's words and couldn't help but feel excited. Now this is what you call domineering. Putting a peak-level law enforcer here meant that from today on, no peak-level law enforcer could do anything to him. Han Fei immediately asked, "How can I take people in?" Earth 9 said, "The sea-quelling painting can carry mountains and rivers. Master can summon a projection of the world in the painting to descend and put them in. Then you can take away this projection. The 9 sounds mist is a very good trapping array. As long as the 9 sounds mist traps them for a moment, they can be taken into the painting." Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "Can I use the power of the laws of the 9 sounds?" Earth 9 responded, "Yes, but this world is only a kind of weapon after all. So, whether you use the laws or us, Master will be under a certain amount of pressure." Han Fei nodded. "For example," Earth 9 said, "if you want us to descend, Master, you need to provide a massive amount of spiritual energy and energy support. However, if you are on the sea, Water Swamp can absorb energy on its own. If you are in the forest, I can also absorb spiritual energy and energy on my own. It depends on where you are fighting, Master. If you want to use the laws of the 9 sounds, you need to consume your own spiritual power. So, the power of the laws will also weaken." Han Fei took a breath. Anyway, he had already obtained the biggest treasure, the source water. Although this sea-quelling painting was also an awesome treasure, he didn't necessarily need it so much. If he encountered a law enforcer, he could use the sea-quelling painting to help. But if he was stronger than them, it was probably safer to go to forge the universe. With this in mind, Han Fei didn't have to worry so much now. Han Fei responded, "I see. I'll go out first. I'll call you if I need anything in the future." With a thought in his mind, Han Fei disappeared from the sea-quelling painting with a swish. Yang Xie and Yu Shire came out with Han Fei. They were still on the 10,000-step step. Han Fei looked back and found that the sea-quelling painting was still flying in the air. As he waved his hand, the sea-quelling painting disappeared and sank into his body. Yang Xie sighed. They finally came out. Han Fei frowned and said, "Senior brother, according to what you said, this should be the 6th day since I entered the sea-quelling painting. Then if the others came out, did they all leave?" Yang Xie smiled and said, "Maybe they were not sent here at all?" Yu Shire echoed, "It makes sense." The 3 of them went down the steps. Along the way, the skeletons did not become super big skeletons, nor did they create a skeleton storm. When Han Fei walked out of the boneyard and returned to the outside of the Sky City, he turned his head and looked up at the gatehouse, only to find that the corpse was still there. Han Fei immediately said, "Senior, may I ask if the people who went in with me have all come out?" The corpse glanced at Han Fei. "Yes." Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief and then said, "Senior, why are you guarding here?" The corpse seemed to be lost in thought and paused for a moment before saying, "Home." Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. Where did this Sky City come from? However, this was good. In an unknown area, there was still such a place, like a paradise, which seemed not bad. As for other secrets here, there should be a lot of them. It seemed that now he had the ability to look for them. Just when Han Fei was about to ask Yang Xie to look for opportunities with him, he suddenly saw 2 fishing boats flying into the sky. Jiang Qin and everyone else were there. Chapter 960. At this moment, the atmosphere was a bit weird. The only thing Han Fei was sure of was that Jiang Qin and Yang Xie were having an affair. The 2 of them looked at each other. Although Jiang Qin was still a little cold, her breathing became rapid. Yang Xie looked at Jiang Qin deeply for a while and suddenly opened his arms. Swish. The 2 of them hugged each other. Han Fei scratched his head and jumped directly onto the fishing boat. "When did you come out?" Luo Xiaobai nodded. "We only went in for a day. There seems to be something wrong with the time here. We came back after we got some opportunities." Zhang Xuanyu immediately put his arm around Han Fei's shoulder and said, "Look, I'm at the intermediate level. See? I'm at the intermediate level. Lu Renkuang chuckled. I'm also at the intermediate level. My armor box is full. On the other side, Wang Dashuai, Chu Linyuan, Bai Lu, and Mu Qingchuan had already met. Looking at these two couples, and then at Jiang Qin and Yang Xie behind him, Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. It seems that the Thug Academy has a good tradition of internal love. Chu Linyuan said, Little junior brother, did you get it? Han Fei nodded. Wang Dashuai immediately grinned. I knew I would get it. Han Fei couldn't help asking, Senior brother, when did you come out? Did the others come out too? Chu Linyuan said, We came out about 6 hours earlier than you. We appeared directly outside the boneyard. When we came out, everyone realized that you had already got the sea-quelling painting. So, without a moment's pause, they all left. I reckon that you should be out soon as well. So, I asked everyone to wait for you here. Han Fei thought, sure enough. Han Fei immediately said, Xiaobai, since you came out so early, didn't you go to look for opportunities? Luo Xiaobai nodded. There shouldn't be many opportunities in a short time. In fact, all the opportunities we encountered were in this world. There should be many people like us. I met a lot of people when I was fighting for opportunities. Han Fei frowned. Scattered all over this world? Zhang Xuanyu said exaggeratedly, What do you think? However, it was really a narrow escape from death. I went to a purple bamboo forest, and after going through a lot of difficulties, I finally obtained a high-grade divine weapon rod. Of course, I can't compare to you. The flesh on Lu Renkuang's face shivered and he said, I went to an orchard. Let me tell you, those fruits can run on their own and are extremely difficult to catch. There were also fruits that could hit people. There were also some fruit trees with long whips that could whip people. Some fruits would self-destruct. If it wasn't for my excellent defense, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to return. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Are fruits so powerful? However, thinking about it, it made sense. Earth 9 was formed from a fruit, so it was not surprising to call it a fruit spirit. While they were telling the story, they suddenly heard Jiang Qin say excitedly, My father is still alive? At this moment, they were still hugging each other. Jiang Qin raised her head in Yang Xie's arms and then quickly turned to look at Han Fei. Why didn't he come out? Before Han Fei replied, Yang Xie said, Don't worry. In the picture, there were many people from the Thousand-Star City. Teacher is staying a little longer to stabilize them. He will be able to come out soon. Han Fei was surprised. Sister Qin, you don't know? Yang Xie said, I haven't told you. Teacher went in earlier than me, and I went in later. Hearing Yang Xie's words, Han Fei immediately understood. No wonder when Jiang Qin said that she was looking for someone, she seemed to only be looking for one person. It turned out that there was such a situation. Han Fei said, Sister Qin, don't worry. Junior uncle is fine. By the way, are we really not going to look for opportunities? Leave some opportunities behind. These opportunities are not too important to you anymore. These words were said by the corpse on the gate tower, which meant that the opportunities of this world should be left to others. Han Fei asked, Senior, there are many sea demons outside. If the sea demons come, die. Before Han Fei finished speaking, the corpse expressed his attitude. The corpse looked at everyone. Don't take too many opportunities. Chu Linyuan said, Little junior brother, we really have to leave. Now, we are already several hours behind the others. Our top priority now is not to look for opportunities but to deal with the dangers from the outside world. Once we are slow, if the outside world is in turmoil and the old president is targeted, we will miss the best opportunity. Han Fei took a breath. Chu Linyuan was right. This time, it was a fruitful trip. But outside, old Jiang had to deal with so many people alone. Once most of the others went out and publicized the fact that he had obtained the sea-quelling painting, they might really attack old Jiang. Besides, if they didn't go out, old Jiang definitely couldn't leave. But if they went out first or at the same time, old Jiang could take them with him even if they had to run away. Han Fei took a breath and said, Let's go. Those guys have been gone for 6 hours. Let me see if I can teleport there directly with the teleportation array. Outside. The Sea Demon's Forbidden Land. In this battle, Blue Feather was tricked and the 10,000 Demon Valley suffered a great loss. 4 of the 8 wings of Blue Feather were killed, and more than 5,000 Sea Demon Realm powerhouses were killed. Blue Feather and Chen Yan-ing were injured, and it was impossible for them to attack the Scattered Stars Island in a short time. However, Xue Shenqi certainly wouldn't underestimate the 10,000 Demon Valley. Although half of the 8 wings of Blue Feather were dead, Chen Yan-ing had advanced, which meant that the 10,000 Demon Valley now had 2 Dao-seeking level powerhouses, which were comparable to explorers. Besides, Xue Shenqi didn't care about the underground city at all, even though he had come here at this moment. In the sky, Xue Shenqi said lightly, "This time, if the ownership of the sea-quelling painting is determined, I hope you won't fight too hard. If you want to fight, wait until I take the people of the Scattered Stars Island away." Someone laughed and said, "Old Xue. Of course, we have to take your people away. However, I think someone will definitely not be able to leave this time." Here, many people didn't look good. For example, Elder Sun's face didn't seem very good. Sun Baixing, one of the 3 ancestors of the Sun family, looked extremely gloomy at the moment. "I don't care about the painting now. But whoever killed my grandson, I won't let it go." An expert from the Death Door sect snorted and said, "Our Death Door sect has always been amiable. It's fine if our disciples die fighting for the map. But I want to know, who got the painting? What are you going to do?" The powerhouse from the Death Door sect looked at Chao Wudi of the Chao family. He guessed that the sea-quelling painting was most likely to belong to the Chao family. Others didn't know, but he did. When Chao Qiu was born, he came to the Death Door sect to seal the bloodline of the god of war in his body, which was a top secret. Someone from the Heavenly Sword sect said, "The 7 major sects should be united. Let me tell you, our Heavenly Sword sect won't intervene in whose disciple gets the sea-quelling painting. As long as we can prove that the disciple has the chance to become a king, we will protect him." A woman from the Jade Fairy Palace nodded. "No matter which sect's disciple gets the sea-quelling painting, our Jade Fairy Palace will take it seriously. Even if his sect dominates, it doesn't matter." The Mountain Sea Pavilion seconded. The Grand Void Academy seconded. The Origin Returning Peak seconded. The 7 major sects expressed their stance. The faces of the major families didn't look very good. It was difficult for an ordinary family to deal with a sect. What's more, if the 7 sects joined forces, their strength would be terrifying. Especially the Heavenly Sword sect, which had a venerable realm powerhouse. Who dared to disrespect them? In addition to this venerable realm powerhouse, the other major sects all had explorers. For all they knew, there might even be venerables who were still alive. This wasn't something that ordinary large clans could shake. Unless the big families also joined forces, but this possibility was slim. The big families were in constant disputes. Even if they joined forces, they would only join forces for a very short time. If the disciples of the 7 major sects really got the sea-quelling painting, the big families would have to join forces to crush the 7 major sections. However, this was obviously impossible. A powerhouse from a big family laughed and said, "It's unlikely that the 7 major sects will get the sea-quelling painting. How strong can a group of students who haven't seen much of the world be? But what if the people of the Thug Academy get it?" Someone didn't mention the Thug Academy just now because he didn't mention it. It was difficult to fight the 7 major sects, but it wasn't so difficult to fight the Thug Academy. In the past, in every dispute, there was always the shadow of the Thug Academy, and this time was no exception. Besides, these powerhouses had also heard of Han Fei. He was not weak and had obtained the Wind God Pearl. He was at least a rare talent in 100 years and was also very competitive. Old Bai sneered. "Humph. Well, you can't beat the 7 major sects, so you want to beat the Thug Academy? Who gave you the courage to beat the Thug Academy? Do you think that the Thug Academy is easy to bully with only 2 old men left?" Humph. Sound waves rolled in the air. "I, Jiang Daqian, am afraid of anything? If you push me too hard, we 2 old men will kill a venerable." Old Bai sneered. "I agree with you, old Jiang. If you want to beat us, bring out a venerable first. If you can't bear the price, don't even think about it. Bah! 2 old men you want to kill a venerable? Aren't you afraid of making others laugh their heads off at your words? Baikongi glanced at the person who spoke, glanced at the big axe in his hand, and sneered. Young Erfu, the Thug Academy is not as hot-tempered as you. Believe it or not, I will do nothing but destroy your Yang family. The person called Young Erfu sneered. Why don't you try? Suddenly, everyone's expression changed. In an instant, everyone disappeared from the sky, and the next moment, they had already arrived at the ancient battlefield. Because someone came out. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.